After 14 days of testimony, state prosecutors have rested their case in the trial involving 3 former San Antonio police officers. The defendants are charged in connection to the death of Melissa Perez. Right now, the defense has called up their first witness, a retired SAPD homicide detective.
In other news now, the defense called another retired San Antonio police detective to the stand in the trial of 3 former officers accused in the killing of Melissa Perez. And we are now in day 16 of testimony. So this afternoon, the defense called retired SAPD detective and Sergeant Lisa Miller to the stand.
It's easier to say, oh, wait till he actually does something. But by that time, other people are hurt. In reality, what's it going to take him to go from here to here? Nothing.
A split second.
Exactly. Yeah. Your ethics are in conflict with what my agenda is, so we're just going to set you over here.
And that was the last time they talked to me.
When you're going to take somebody's freedom away from them, or try to, you better have your ducks in a row. And you better be able to explain it. You better be able to. You better be able to prove what you're saying, the accusations that you're making.
My favorite comment was from some dolt who said, and I will quote her, "These defense attorneys suck. All they want to talk about is the law."
Blu Wolf Podcast.
This episode of the Blu Wolf Podcast is the third part in a series covering the event and aftermath of an officer-involved shooting in September of 2023. If you would like to see a breakdown of the shooting or the response to the trial verdict, please watch our previous podcasts. Thank you for watching.
Hey, welcome to the Blu Wolf Podcast. I'm Willie Cantu. We have an exciting podcast today. It's the second in a series of this trial that we just got through in November 10th, where the 3 San Antonio police officers were charged with murder and aggravated assault and deadly conduct in the shooting of Melissa Perez, who they say was exhibiting a mental health crisis, and that is true. But it ended in an acquittal of all charges. The 12-panel jury, decided that within 12 minutes. It looked like 45 minutes, which was pretty quick in and of itself, but they decided that in 15 minutes. 12 minutes. It was 12 minutes. Yeah. So we're here. Like I said, David and I did one before. It's not out yet, but it will be before this one. And I wanted to have this in a series because we just couldn't have the experts on all at once, along with the attorneys all at once. That would be a long, drawn out podcast, not to mention the setup with the mics and the cameras and things like that. So we kind of want to keep it simple and also to keep it a little bit shorter for the viewer's attention span as well. But we now know that the shooting was justified. And I want to say that obviously we have to attribute this victory for the 3 officers who now have that weight off their back to a great defense team that they had. They had the Lloyd Norton Law Group, they had the Christian Casillas Nisbet Law Group, and then Ben Cifuentes firm, along with Mario Del Prado. I called them the A-team. These guys, wow, they did a great job. But it wasn't just them. I mean, they steered the boat, but the crew and especially the experts were phenomenal. And we have them here today. I know these people. I've known these people through my career. We never really worked together so much, but just watching and the way they answered the questions and the knowledge that they had, I gained a lot better respect for you guys. I'm telling you, I was blown away by that. But we have retired Detective Mark Duke with us. He retired 28 years ago from homicide. Yes. Yeah, from homicide. And then retired Sergeant Lisa Miller, who also did 28 years. What's the deal with 28 years? I mean, everybody just, I can't reach that 30.
Just couldn't get to 29, right?
Yeah, I gotta get the hell out, you know. But you retired out of what unit?
West Dog Watch.
West Dog Watch. Okay, so you were on patrol for 5 years, right? As a sergeant. Yeah. That had to have been fun.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. It put me back in
That's my only regret, that I did not reach the rank of sergeant, and at least experience that, to guide some of these people. But it's the way it works out. We also have retired Sergeant Ed Pedraza here, who retired out of the training academy.
Kinda. I was removed from the training
Okay.
academy. I retired
But
from.
you know what? I mean, what you just said. I mean, we're going to talk about why you were removed. So it wasn't necessarily what people would think, like, oh, that guy's, he messed up or whatever. So it really goes along with what we're trying to steer this conversation with, because it's all part of that whole, what I want to say, debacle. If there's probably a worse word, but at least to be somewhat cordial with it. You know what I mean? But and Ed has some pretty good information that will go along. He didn't get put on the stand necessarily, and we'll talk about why you didn't, but you definitely will add to the conversation with us. But guys, thank you for agreeing and welcome to the podcast. I don't know if you guys are listeners. I think you said you listened a few times, but I know y'all are busy. I don't know. But we are trying to bring attention to issues like this that are going on in not just our department, but it's been across the country. In fact, just towards during our trial, because it was a month long, there was one going on in Austin that was very similar. And my buddy, his name is Mark Sawa. He was an expert on that one, and we were keeping abreast of both sides, because he was also might have been used on this trial as well. He was doing two things at the same time, and Joyner was too. Chuck Joyner was doing that as well, because he was testifying up that way. But and then shortly thereafter, an officer in Ohio got acquitted of shooting a Black pregnant lady who tried to run him over with the vehicle after she was stealing $600 worth of liquor. Imagine that, pregnant lady stealing liquor. But he got acquitted of all charges, thankfully. And those cases, they all just mimic the same attempt, I'd say, to jail the good guys, is what we're seeing. But
like an evolution of a pattern against law enforcement. You can see it. It's just playing out for us, right? I'm sure you can see it too. We used to be us, and we worried about the bad guys on the street. Then it evolved to, like, are you more afraid of dealing with somebody who might go to jail and hurt you, or are you more afraid to deal with the administration? And now it's kind of evolved from that to, like, being charged with a crime. And you can just see it happening, and the whole world is just watching, and it's sad, right?
I guess we can still call it an evolution, because it's slowly starting to continue. The federal system has gotten better. Law enforcement and the federal law enforcement, they're getting a lot more recruits coming in, people wanting to get in, because of the change of the regime, in Washington with President Trump. And I don't, whatever people think about him, it's happening. It's not my opinion. It's what's happening across the country. But here we are in Blue City, San Antonio, Blue County, San Antonio. And again, I sound like a broken record, but we always lag behind in trends. Always. We try things that have already been tried and disproven back this way. I don't get it. People just, I've always said this, if San Antonio were ever given the task of reinventing a wheel, it would not start off round. No. They would always think that they're going to do something different, because we have a better idea from whatever it is. And
this is a bad trend to take the lead on. And we've covered that in a podcast that isn't out yet. I mean, San Antonio, I would have never thought this would happen in San Antonio. Just never had, right? It hasn't happened. And I was completely shocked that it had, and I'm sure it won't be the last. And that's why it's so important that people get involved and get out there and vote for this next district attorney. I mean, the voter turnout is notoriously low. The disinterest is something that the citizens have to get over, because what's happening at City Hall and what's happening at the district attorney's office affects us all. And it's going to affect the way your police officers in San Antonio conduct their business too, on your behalf. So.
Well, along that vein, you're probably thinking the same way I did, we put the bad guys in jail, and as a defense attorneys trying to keep them out of jail, out of going to prison. So we looked at them in a bad light. And now, mind you, if you went to trial, you saw some of the tactics that they try to pull. They try to discredit you, try to make you look bad, and we take our work very seriously, or you should, right? And our image and our pride that we poured into this case. And then you have some people would say some sleazy defense attorney coming in, which a lot of them were court appointed, you know what I mean? Because these guys were not court appointed, not Nico and, Tom and Ben, they were not court appointed, had they been court appointed, our guys probably would have been in prison, just the way it is, with them. But, and luckily we have Cleat, granted, but because that would have never happened. But what I'm saying is because I had that feeling with defense attorneys as well. These guys they're not the good guys either.
Yeah, and that's that landscape shift that I was referring to. But I'll just say this before we get back into what you did. You guys, I said this on the podcast that hasn't been released yet. I text Nico after the trial and I said, hey, Nico, you and your team, or the team of lawyers, had a big part in saving these men's lives. I believe that 100%.
Oh, absolutely.
And I said on the last podcast, all of you experts that were involved, those that testified and those that were ready to testify, did likewise. And not downplaying at all what the defense team brought. I mean, they were magnificent, really, at the end of the day. I've never seen that many A-list lawyers come together in co-counsel. That's never happened that I'm aware of, and I don't think it'll happen again. But, it was the fact that you guys came on and provided substantive ways for the jury to see things that helped them understand what happened. And that is so critical. And those three men owe you guys their lives. And I'll thank you on their behalf. I'm sure they did it themselves. But
so you said that you, again, on according to your testimony, that you were asked by Jason, because you and Jason had known each other, Jason Goss of Norton Law Firm, to review it. And you were a little reluctant. You saw what was on the news, and even whatever they sent us and evidence for us to review, it's like you see it, and we're only human, and we have our experiences, and obviously everybody here knows tactics, and you have this
that's the knee jerk.
Yeah, the knee jerk reaction, and again, I caught myself doing that, but
the awful but lawful kind of thing, like your emotions.
But the sad part is the way this went down, and I don't want to get into it yet about what you're saying, that they took a look at it, which is why we ended up where we ended up. You know what I mean? Because there's more to that. Without getting into the weeds on that, we will, I think, later down the way. There was an agenda for that reason. It wasn't just being ignorant.
Yeah, you're being extremely polite by
yes,
taking
you are.
a cursory look at that. Because, if
yes,
you break it down, and we're going to be candid, you're talking about professional investigators that are supposed to understand their job, their skills, and apply those skills to what they're investigating, right? You broke it down pretty good. Understanding the facts from where you are to what happened, and bring it out so that the truth can be told, and then you can present that. But I think what you're alluding to is that wasn't done. It was a cursory look, and those people did this to our own. And what we were talking about is, if you do it to your own, how are those other investigations being handled? And we're not trying to call into question, we did on the last podcast. I wouldn't blame any defense attorney to come out and say, hey man, I want this looked at again. There's some credibility issues here. And so, that opens up a whole different can of worms. So I do understand what you're saying, and I appreciate your politeness in talking about that. But you do expect more from homicide. You guys spent so much of your career there, right? It's a reflection of what you build and what you left, right? So it shouldn't have happened that way. Police officers are notorious, right? And we were all police officers, right? And so we're all guilty of it to some extent, especially when we're younger. We go more by what we hear from our peers than what we actually know. And when you get the administration going to roll call saying, hey, this is a bad shoot, and then you get the association saying the chief did this right when he clearly didn't do it right, and then it's easy for them to take that lead, right? And I it's sad, but we're gonna have to start having some independent thinkers out there and say, hey.
But you're also looking at it with professional eyes, and I can say this, and what I described about you guys at the opening was not kissing your ass because you're here. I was really just wowed by y'all's experience and the way you described it, and your professionalism with it. You know what I mean? This is movie type shit. You know, oh, we got them and they're homegrown. They're people I know out of my department. I'm telling you, I was really proud of that, to see that. So you're looking at it through those lenses, because these people, they really don't even want to, because it's not them. It has nothing to do with them. You know what I mean? And that's what I see. A lot of these guys, these officers that are involved in potential, situations like this where there might be wrongdoing, a lot of people distance themselves from them.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
And find out who your friends are really quick.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Mike Kelly said it, people are overly interested because it's about 1 to 1.5% of the people that go through stuff like this, right up until you're that 1.5%. And then you look around and there's nobody there. And the months turn into years like they did in these cases.
Well, especially when you're no longer going into the building.
Yeah.
Then people forget about you, and, not knowing what's going on is hard. You're sitting there going, what are they doing? Because no one wakes up in the morning thinking about you other than you.
So what do you think when you heard the feedback that you were getting, that the troops think it's a bad shooting and you start to look at it? Because this is what you said.
I looked at the case, and I was very surprised at what I saw that resulted in the decisions that were made. And I felt obligated because of what I perceived as a huge injustice, and agreed that I would work with them on this case.
I mean, that's a very poignant way of saying it. You just looked at it and said, man, this is not righteous. This is not right.
I'll tell you out loud, a lot of the guys are saying, yeah, bad shoot. On the side, hey, Sarge, what do you think about that? Because I know these guys. They're not murderers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so everyone, I think, was afraid to say, no, I don't agree with those guys. Because, again, it was put out at roll calls. Everybody said it was a bad shoot. And as conflicted as you might feel, if you value your job, and I'm talking from cadets on up, sure. Yeah, bad shoot. This is just so it was the older guys that would come to me off the side like, hey, dude, these guys are good guys. Like, none of them are murderers. Like, none of them would have done that, But out loud, again, everybody's saying, yeah, so.
It's appalling though, right? I mean, we just briefly touched on it. And again, really to your point earlier, it's a lot of stuff to talk about. So we'll have to dial it back a little bit. But they make an effort from the chief's office to send administrative, executive level people out to roll calls, right? Deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs to say, mainly deputy chiefs, that, hey, this was a bad shooting. The association comes in on the heels of it to echo the same thing. And when these guys get acquitted, no one goes to the roll calls. No one says, hey,
right.
Welcome back. No one says, hey,
That's true.
what? We got that one wrong. We were off.
Can you imagine?
And you want to say, you never get it right. But at least come out and as a good leader and say, look, we may have all jumped to some conclusions here. We're going to do better. Even when you testified, I think both of you, but I know for you for sure, they asked about a chief's memo that went out, and I don't even remember. And I obviously, once you started talking about it, I remember where he talked about making sure that the standards would be the standards in line with Graham.
Yes.
And so you're
saw
basically going back and countering what you yourself said, which is normal for him. But it's just amazing that they don't come out to the roll calls quickly to defend the officers, but they want to come quickly to indict the officers. Right?
I think the key was when you said what a good leader would do.
Yeah, we've said that a lot. Yeah. And there's some good leadership lacking. There's still some good leaders in the police department. Unfortunately,
Well, there's a difference between, and people need to understand the distinction between supervisors and leaders. And, obviously, like you mentioned, you have these people in these positions of supervision and supposed to be leaders that had no experience over something as technical as, say, homicide. We had them in SWAT. We had sergeants that weren't on SWAT as patrolmen. The one shooting.
Let me just say, I would be okay with that if they would just shut up and listen and learn, but they will not. They are determined to project themselves
Well, they're
as
empowered
the
by
leader.
position.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
So that's what the problem is. Not that they're put in those positions with no experience, is they start taking over with no experience.
And that was, something that I wanted also as a caveat say, what you're just saying right there. I'm not saying that if you've never worked in that unit and you get put in that unit, you suck. That's not true, because I've also experienced good leaders that I told you learn to respect, get put in a unit, but they realized what they didn't know, and they also picked out the people that had the experience, because in the end we're all grown men and women. You know what I mean? Yeah, some are older than others or whatever, but even boots on the ground patrolmen are older and have more experience than some sergeants nowadays that they have. Most of them now, and so you have to go, hey, let me rely on that person for some experience.
I think that argument can be made for a lieutenant and a captain, probably more for a captain and a DC. But to your point, stop talking, start watching. But for a sergeant, I think you have to have the skills that only come from having worked there. Yeah, I just don't think there's any substitution. And I've made the argument, and I worked in a lot of different areas, including sex crime, but I don't know that I would have been able to be a plug and play into homicide. I was a pretty fair investigator. I could think objectively, but it's different, right? I mean, it's different.
It's not dope.
No, it's not dope.
Not dope.
And so, those are very two different lanes. So I mean, to your point, or both your points, I think that first line supervisor has to be a sergeant that worked there as an investigator, worked from ag assaults up to murders, can understand that environment, and then kind of go in there and handle it. And I think what you're saying is that when they don't do that, they're doing themselves a disservice, but not just in homicide, in almost every area of the department.
Oh, yeah.
Put people that have the experience and the background in those places so they can teach up or school up some of the people that are coming there to do it.
You have people like yourselves that come into this in this profession, and it is a profession. It's not a fucking job. It's a career. You have a pension and all things like that. It's not like I took a job at McDonald's to make a little bit of money, but you guys came in, and then obviously whatever pride you hold in yourself to do a good job, and obviously you believe that if I do a good job, then I'll be rewarded for it, one way, shape, or form. Obviously our promotions don't work like that. You just take a test and you're rewarded for passing that test, again, which has nothing to do with actually whatever job you might get into. But you carry yourselves in a certain way, your own livelihoods, to say, I'm a professional, and I'm going to be professional at my job. And then, as you know, along with being a police officer comes the ethical part, the duty, the sense of fairness, and obviously you're imposing justice, on people, and obviously you want to be fair in that. So you hold yourself like that, and I can only imagine by you looking at that and going, this is an injustice right here from what you're seeing done to what we consider brother officers, right? And then you have this angst like, oh, fuck, if I can help out in any way, I'm there. And obviously you have someone reaching out to you going, yes, you can help us out.
Yeah, but there's a bigger problem at hand, and that's what you're talking about. You've seen it, you forecasted it, right? You could see the problems that were coming. In a lot of those positions, to kind of like condense what we're saying, the best people don't always get the job. It's always about, well, I'm friends with this guy. Oh, this guy came over. Or this captain.
Now, you're getting that from at one point, interim deputy chief. So
yeah. So
he knows how that works.
But it really does work that way, and it shouldn't work that way. And then I know that you guys both know, and we talked about it on a podcast. You had a lieutenant, a couple of sergeants, a captain, even a DC, suffer the wrath of questioning above them. It was an assistant chief at the time on a murder, right? Or it was a shooting. It was a justified murder. And they basically said, hey, we don't think we should walk warrants. Here's similar circumstance, just not police officers.
Right.
And they ultimately trumped him, said, hey, you're going to do it, right? And then all of those guys eventually got moved out. So your point is valid. It's concerning. The things that you saw and that you kind of predicted were going to happen have now perpetuated themselves in avenues like this. In cases where now people are getting arrested, officers are getting arrested for on-duty shootings. And we all know that came from, I think, what do they call it? Command influence, right? And if somebody was saying, well, there may have been, no, there was command influence. You were the subject of command influence. I've been the subject of command influence. You said that you were put in timeout because you voiced your opinion. Yeah. And so those are real things. But yeah, thank you for saying that, Mark. We got a little sidetracked, which we tend to do, but please carry on.
No, it's all important. Then again, I want to know what you were thinking, especially someone, what you said, like you, that said that I would never work for the defense. And now, mind you, at some point, I said the same thing, but it was a long time ago. And it wasn't until I got a little bit more experience. And then obviously I know Nico. I've known Nico for years, you know. And then when I started getting closer to retirement, I was like, I think I have something to offer to help you. Because then they were defending police officers. You know, I worked on the case, me and Bobby, with the two street crimes guys, Thomas Villarreal and Carlos Castro. And that was the beginning with us, you know, to tell you the truth, from these cases that are happening. This one totally blows that one out of the water. But that was the start. That was a political persecution, just like this one was. And I finally went there. It was a political persecution where it was a George Floyd fallout. You know, it happened around George Floyd, involved an African American, and use of force. So
you said that on the stand. You alluded to that on the stand, right?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my first foray into these situations was John Schiller's case, right when I retired.
the one that happened off duty?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know much about that one.
That was the first case. It was kind of weird. I just got to talking to Joey Contreras. John had just hired him as his attorney, and I said, I'm getting ready to retire. If you have any cases that you want me to take a look at, let me know. I won't take any. I mean, I'll look at any case, but I'll tell you thumbs up or thumbs
Right.
down whether I'm willing to have anything to do with it. And he said, as a matter of fact, I do have a case I'd like you to look at. It's John Schiller's case. And I said,
And John went through over 2 years of hell for that.
yeah. I said, send me what you got. And he sent it to me, and I was like, oh, dude, this is going to be a walk in the park. I mean, I'm can't wait to get started. So I
You think
wrote,
his had to do something with political?
oh, absolutely. It was a botched investigation. Same thing. They did not handle
Some
the
guy took
investigation
a phone
properly.
from his wife, ex-wife, and then he went over to retrieve the phone. The guy was a little aggressive. John pulled out a weapon, and then they wound up with deadly conduct, ag assault, something like that.
Yeah, ag assault, deadly weapon, but there's more details
Yeah,
than
it's
that
just
we
kinda
won't get
in a
into. But the bottom line is, it was a shoddy investigation again, and I wrote a 6-page report, just tearing the homicide office up in that case, and
Why do you think they went with that?
because they don't know what they're doing.
There was
Well, we
political-
know that, but I mean,
Yes.
what were they after John? Did they not like John?
No, well, no, I don't
Because
think they
it was the
particularly
person
liked
wasn't
him,
black. They
but
were
there was
Hispanic,
no way
right?
a detective made the decision to arrest him. That came from above the detective level, and I think
And that was what year?
well, I retired in 2020, so the 2021, I think,
Yeah,
is
it was
when I
on
got
the
the
back
case.
end of all that 2020 unrest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
In any
So
event,
it's attached to all
we
that.
ended up getting the case ended up getting rejected at the DA's office because, like I said, I was like, put me on. the
So
stand.
tell me this: was that at the behest of the department or the DA? Because this one here had
No, he had
cooperation
already
for
been
both.
arrested. He had already been arrested and charged, and the case was going to trial, and we got it dismissed
Okay.
and his record expunged without ever having to set foot in court. And I told John at the time, it was kind of a laugh. I was like, dude, I'm a little disappointed because I was going to tear some new buttholes.
You wanted to get on the
for what I
stand,
did.
yeah.
Let me do it.
Yeah.
So back on to
Yeah.
to the point of this case, I in particular, Willie too, but I in particular, I was very hard on Soto. I realized I thought that I thought his work was shoddy. I know at some point in the last podcast that had come out, you talked about tongue twister, right? Purposeful. Help me out.
Purposefully
Yeah. Omission or deception or something
deceptive.
like that. And then, as that went on, those kind of words continued to show or show themselves or present themselves. You use them, and then Butch. And then at one point, Butch says, hey, man, that's just untruthful when he says, I made the decision to arrest.
Yeah.
And so, so I was pretty hard on him. What are your thoughts on, like, are you comfortable talking about it now that, you looked at it and you've testified in it? Like, what are your thoughts on Detective Soto's investigation of the officers here?
Well, this is not the first case that he had that you could say he made a bad decision, and that's not my opinion. A jury in another case said that, and it was a self-defense case, and the jury found the person he arrested not guilty. And it was a very clear-cut case, as this one should have been. But obviously, he, in his own words, all he got to was probable cause, and you could even argue whether he had that. I don't think it was a good investigation. Obviously, I said so on the stand. And I'm always very hesitant. I just don't want to talk bad about policemen.
I'll talk bad about
and
him.
I went up and shook his hand, and just said, hang in there. But when you're talking about somebody's lives, I mean, you can't play games with people's lives. And sometimes if you've got to focus in on somebody else's mistakes for the greater good, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, and that's what we should all do, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's concerning to hear that, because I don't know anything about what other case you're talking about. But I do know that if I was a supervisor in there or a commander in that unit and I started to see things like that, we would have a long, very personal conversation about what's expected of you, first and foremost, and how you handle that. Because all arrest warrants get approved by supervisors. That hasn't changed. So, and I said in that last podcast, I thought it was particularly interesting that neither the lieutenant or the sergeants were really brought up in this case. They brought up the sergeant just once, real briefly. But those are involved in these conversations, and I don't know why they weren't brought up. And so somebody looked at that. Whoever the sergeant was at the time had to look at those.
Whittaking,
Chad, right? Is that his name? And so, it's interesting, but that nobody has said, hey, man, our standards are not being met by you and this whole unit, apparently.
they don't know what the standards are.
Somebody has to know what the standards are.
I think I know what you're saying, but I like you said, I believe that they do know what the standards are.
No,
But obviously this was not, I don't think there was ever the question of, hey man, what do you think? Should we? No, it was like, oh fuck, we're going to do this. There was no question. That's why they had that meeting. And again, we'll talk more about that. Not like, what do y'all think? It was like, this is what's going to happen.
Let me tell you why that is. Because there are conflicting philosophies about police work. There is the patrol philosophy that says we arrest the bad guys. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
There's an administrative philosophy that says the way I can assure the public that they are safe is by showing my officers arresting the bad guy. Do you agree? The conflict should come from the investigations section that says probable cause is not enough for what we do. Anybody who believes that probable cause is enough for what we do has not matured or progressed in their profession. That middle entity of investigations has to be able to say, arresting is not what we want to accomplish. We want to successfully prosecute these people. And if you don't have an administration who is mature enough to recognize that, this is the end result of that.
So what do we say to the citizens that are out there? Like,
They don't want to have to answer to the citizens. It's easier to just parade somebody in front of a camera, say we arrested them, and when the charges get dropped later, that's on the DA's office. We did our job.
Well, it's about the chief's image.
Absolutely.
And pandering to the, again, the leftist government that we have. And then they always go back to the anti-police people, Act 4SA people, because they in these articles that I got these quotes from, there's always a quote from Act 4SA. I don't know why the fuck they talk to them. They have nothing to offer. But it's very cowardly to do that too.
Yes, that is
because
my
they
point.
don't want to have to answer the questions when they say, look, man, the process is, and not just because they're policemen, because they're people and they're citizens, that everybody's innocent until proven guilty. So, but the public nowadays, they don't like the police. And it's hard to say because we only hear about the people that don't like them. We know that there's a lot of good people that like law enforcement.
We just heard from 12 of them.
Yeah.
Right. Melissa Bettis' family.
Yes.
They mentioned right off the bat when Soto went and talked to him that they're supporters of the police.
Yeah, but Will,
You know?
when you said, the people are innocent until proven guilty, that wasn't afforded these officers at all.
No.
They
No,
were
no.
guilty. And
Yes.
these folks had to come here and show that they were innocent.
Right.
And that's the problem. You're
But-
not giving our own members the same amount of courtesy or the same amount of
But to
due
what
process that
she's
you're giving
saying
anyone else.
is that the parading of these people that gives the what they believe the majority of the people that don't like the police, and what is the one of the biggest words that kept coming out of this, even I'd say especially since George Floyd, I'd say, well, Michael Brown, well, let's go that far, accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Accountability. So the chief showed that I'm holding my own guys accountable, and therefore, so he looks good
Yes.
because what do we say? Everybody looked at face value and says, "Oh, that wasn't a good shoot." So he looks good, putting these what everybody perceives now as bad guys,
Yes.
and just shunning them away, but totally disregarding the process.
Yeah,
Yes.
he looks good until
It's
he does
optics.
it.
Yeah.
And then there's
Right.
no standards on him because City Hall is someone sanctioning all this.
Right.
I've said it a lot of times because I've been there, and I'll say it again. And I know I've been at shootings where people under my command have been in shootings, and I get there as quick as I can. Sometimes before him, the chief of police makes those shootings or arrives at those shootings, and he's on the phone with the deputy city manager, and she's the one that's dictating the pace of this. But I would just want it's a good time to transition to you because we're talking about the trial, but you were involved before the officers were arrested. You were the sergeant over tactics at the training academy, and you had been there a couple of years. And
No, at this point, I had been there 2 months.
2 months. Okay, but when you retired, you were there a couple of years. Thank you for clarifying that. So you were asked to come to a meeting. Can you tell us about that meeting? But can you start by who was in the meeting?
So yeah.
I think you need to start from when you got the phone call.
I got the phone call that morning, so 7:45 was start time there. Shortly after we started business there at the academy, I got a call from the captain, the commander of the academy. And he's like, "Hey, I'm on my way to pick you up. Throw on a polo. We're going to the chief's office. I'll explain." Again, I'm not new as a sergeant, but I'm new as a sergeant at the academy. And I'm like, okay, what is this about? What's going on? We get in the car. He's like, "Did you hear about the shooting this morning?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." He goes, "We're going to a meeting about that at the chief's office." And I was like, okay. And he basically says, no one wants to hear your opinion. And if you value your position, you'll just keep your mouth shut, right? And then, so my mind's thinking, why am I going if they don't want, But again, I don't know what I'm doing. This is my first time going to a meeting at the chief's office as a sergeant for the academy. So let me go find out what this is about.
You call that command influence.
Yeah, command.
'Cause that's what that was.
Yeah.
100%. So the whole time I'm thinking, right after he said that, I just shut up. I was like, kind of like, what is this? What am I stepping
I'm gonna ask
into?
you, right? Because he and I had a conversation. I'm not trying to take you away from your story, but I was telling him, was the captain coming to you that way in order to, because he already kind of knew the landscape, was trying to save you some pain and grief, or was he? Do you feel like he was coming at you in an absolutely straightaway kind of saying, "No one wants to hear from you. Don't say shit." Like, was it more trying to protect you or give you a heads up, or more of just like shutting you down?
I can tell you this, that from the day one of the academy, I did not feel like Captain wanted me there, right? I'm very old school in my thinking. I was very critical of new officers coming in as a sergeant. Like, what are you guys learning? Like, why are you guys afraid to put hands on people? Why are you guys afraid to take action? I got into the shooting. They put me there on admin duty, and then just the way things happen, day one of me being there, a cadet shoots his finger off, they fire the sergeant that's there, they say, "Hey Ed, you're going to take over temporarily." And that's how I ended up in that position, right? I had applied for the academy several times, and every time I was denied, and I was told, Captain really doesn't like the way, because when I interview, I'm very honest, hey, I think we're lacking in training. I think our tactics are off. I think we're not teaching them correctly, and I'd like to come in and kind of correct some of that stuff. And they didn't want that. And so I think he already knew me. He knew that I was a little bit outspoken, that I was going to say, not what people wanted, but what I felt was right. That's just me. If I felt, no, that's wrong, then I'm going to say that's wrong. And I think he kind of knew that right off the bat. Now, whether it came from the captain himself or the chief, I know that the captain there, his direct supervisor is the chief, right? And so I only assume that that's where it came from. Was it,
I don't think the chief had enough time to think about you.
Yeah.
I think it was him that again knew that,
Yeah.
and him being a company man, he's not a dumb guy. He knew what the tone was going to go, which way it was going to go, and so therefore he just before I don't want to bring you along and then you screw it up, so.
Yeah, he wasn't going to offer
Yeah.
any objections to whatever was said.
Yeah.
He
The
was.
training academy reports directly to the chief of staff for the police. At that time, it was Bobby Blanton. Bobby Blanton has strong opinions about what he thinks he knows, and so that's probably where that conversation came in. But nonetheless, you're going.
Yeah, so we're on the way. So he says that, and I'm kind of like, I'm already conflicted because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen in this meeting, but him telling me to shut up if my my job depends on me.
Can I call my attorney?
I know. I know.
What am I walking into? So we get to the meeting. It's a small. It wasn't in the chief's office, but one of the I guess conference rooms. It was a small one, maybe as large as this one. There was a lot of people in there. I want to say like 20 people, and it was dark already because they were kind of just waiting for us to show up. They had everything set up on the screens, the TVs, to show the videos. I'm pretty sure every member of command staff was in there. I just looked around the room very quickly, and I was like, wow, and so they start with this meeting, and they're basically, here's the videos, very, very small clips of just when the officers, shot, and boom, it was really quick, and hey, we feel like these officers were extremely off on their decision to do this, and they were.
Who's making those statements?
I don't remember seeing the chief was talking, but somebody else was talking as well, and I don't know if it was Detective Soto or somebody was kind of narrating in the dark, and I don't know exactly who it was. The chief definitely did pop up in and out, so they were both kind of talking, and then the decision was made like, hey, bloop 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 bloop, do you guys see this? This is awful. They were completely wrong in what they did. We feel like this was a crime. We're going to immediately fire these officers. And even when they said that, I was like, what? What do you mean? Like this just happened.
Are you saying that? Or
I'm in my mind right now,
Okay.
right?
So Vada's behind him with his hand on his mouth.
I know somebody grabbed my arm and squeezed me. It was probably Vada. I don't know if it was. And after that, we're going to get some warrants. We're going to arrest these guys. Right.
This is at that meeting at 8:30.
Right. And so I'm processing because I'm just getting to work, and now I'm in the middle of this mess, and I'm like, hey, this just happened a few hours ago, and yeah, you're showing me a couple of videos here, but I know there was a ton of officers there. You can't have looked through all the body cam footage. I'm guessing there's probably 20 hours of video there.
It's kind of common sense.
Did you notice that if Daryl Harris was in there from the district attorney's office?
I don't remember. Daryl Harris came around pretty quick after that meeting, though. To the academy, yeah. And so, and I'm just like,
you learn things here too.
Yeah. So they show all this, and then they're like, okay, so we're gonna do this, and we're gonna arrest them. Does anybody have any problems with that? And I'm.
You're the only one raising your hand.
I'm the only. I think I'm the only sergeant. I don't know if I was the only sergeant in there, but I only remember seeing the command staff, and I'm kind of looking. There's a few of you that I actually thought were good people. Let's see, because if anybody nobody's gonna listen to peon sergeant. Let's see, right? And I'm looking around, and I see kind of people putting their heads down, and they're like, yeah, bad shoot, bad. And I'm like, I thought you were better than that, and I thought you were better than that, and super disappointed. Again, this is internal conflict right now. And then somebody says, yeah, because we would never shoot somebody with a hammer, right?
How could you make that bold of a statement?
I don't know. And I don't even know exactly who said that, but I remember it was like...
Shoot somebody with a rock.
That's what I said. Exactly what I said. I said I would shoot somebody with the fucking rock.
Again,
in the right circumstances.
Specific to the circumstances.
Right? And then somebody grabbed my arm like, shut up, you know? And then I was kind of like, you know, I didn't see who did it. I'm thinking maybe it was Cap. I don't know. So
At any time, did the chief of police ask you for your opinion?
me personally,
Yes.
no.
Did anyone ask you
No.
for your opinion?
No.
So you were brought to this meeting to say nothing?
Say nothing. And that was my conflict here, because then they're like, okay, we're done. We're going to start this process, and everybody can go back to work. And so now I'm walking out with the captain, and he's like, just go with it, Ed. It is. And I'm like, I can't, you know, I can't. Maybe they're guilty, but maybe they're not. But we don't know, because all we know is a blip of a video, and now we're saying that they're guilty of murder and we're going to arrest them.
But you know, it also goes against what we did, what you did from the time you graduated to the time you reached this. We can't assess that quick.
Yeah.
You know, there's a process to everything, even to
Yes.
the simplest crime that I might make an arrest for.
It had to make you physically sick
Right.
to see this
You know,
go on, right? Like,
Yeah.
is that the first time you've ever been in meetings like that?
Yeah, well, 100%.
How easily they just dismiss it and just
To
talk
me,
about
I was
ruining
like,
3 people's
I
lives?
actually know all 3 of these guys, and I know they're not murderers, and I know they're not hotheads out there just trying to shoot people or get, you know, there's no glory in shooting a lady, you know, with a hammer. There's not, you know.
Yeah.
People want to go out in a gunfight with a terrorist, okay, you know, but there's no glory. So these guys are not looking for that. So, you know, I'm thinking there's a lot more to this. And in every shooting, including the shootings I've been in, you're put on admin leave while they do the investigation, you know, or admin duty or whatever. And then months later, they come back and say, oh, you're good or you're not good. But these guys didn't even get afforded that. We were talking about hours after a shooting that these guys are being fired. And that was... And arrested, right? And that was like, I already knew my time here at the academy would be short,
Yeah.
right? Because I can't keep my mouth shut. I can't, you know? And then shortly after that, I got a hold of one of the guys. I was like, look, man, this is what happened. This is how quickly that decision was made that you're turning now, you know, and they did, you know.
First time you get introduced to something like that, do you see how he's flipped it? They just can dismantle people's lives on your own police department?
Yeah.
Not to mention any
That-
citizen out there, but
That's
just
the
on your own
crazy
police
part,
department.
because when I came on, I had the feeling that I could, as long as I'm out there doing my job, whatever happens, begin a shooting, whatever, city's got my back, patrolman, the department's got my back, and for the most part, early on in my career, that just seemed the way it was.
Yeah,
Officer
early in
getting a
your
shooting-
career, that's the way it was.
yeah, but as years, you know, as we got to the latter end of my career, I started seeing these different patterns, right? And I thought, these guys don't care one bit about the officer on the street. Not one. They don't care to know them. They don't care for them to do right. If it looks good in the public's eye, then it's good. If it looks bad in the public's eye, then it's bad. If the media says it's bad, then it's bad. So this is stuff that I was thinking before this meeting, you know, and this just kind of solidified it 100%. Like, they don't care, not one.
So you saw some
bit.
people that you knew and respected that attained the rank of deputy chief, or at least on the command staff, right? Maybe captain, whatever the case is. And you're looking over at them thinking, okay, I know somebody's going to have a voice of reason, right? Like a moral compass, right? And all those moral compasses go away, right? That has to be like disappointing on a whole nother level.
Yes,
right?
because patrolmen talk about it all the time. Like, hey, that guy was a good guy till he got ranked, you know? And I was determined not to be that guy. Like, I don't care. You know, I'm always going to do what I feel is right, despite what the bad outcome might be.
You
So-
know, when I saw what you're describing right there about, I went through this thinking, again, the majority of my career thinking the department had my back. And it goes back to what I'm saying. I do a good job, I'll be rewarded for it. You know, obviously encouraged to do certain things. And for me, in my career, that trust was gone when Rocky Riojas got killed. And what I saw was, you know, I guess you guys knew Rocky a little bit, you know who he was, but a guy that was a better policeman than me, a guy that I aspired to be like, doing his job, and then he gets killed. And now, mind you, there was little political stuff behind that we kind of attributed to, you know, without getting too far in the weeds. And I thought that the truth would come out. Instead, I saw the administration circle the wagons around somebody, a lieutenant particularly. you know, and then it was pretty much, hey, y'all just leave it alone, because we were talking, you know, and y'all just like, it's past, just let it, and I was like, no, wait a minute, like what you're saying, like somebody's got to say something, you know. And at that point, without getting too far into that, I felt like I was in a room with no windows or wall or doors to get out of. I was looking for lateral transfers to get out of the department. It was that bad. I was looking, I looked into the feds. I didn't have a degree, so the only thing I can apply to was the marshals. I took the test, passed it, and then they froze the hiring. So everything was going against me, but I had 10 years on, you know, and I had to make this shift. And thank God I did, because this reminds me, and again, I hadn't thought about it in a long time, what you just said. And I know what you felt or feel like was that the only thing that was going to change was going to be me. So I had to pull my head out of my ass, so to speak, and I had to readjust my thinking. But I'm in a career. I can still do good, and I'll just continue on. But I did vow I'm never going to do shit for this department. I'm going to do it because that's the way I'm wired. Good things. That's the way I was raised, you know, and that's my duty as a police officer. I took that oath. That's how I straightened things up. And when I did that, I tell you what, I settled a little bit, you know. But does that kind of like describe what you felt like?
100%. And it was tough for me. I knew after that meeting, I was like, I'm not going to be here long because I'm not going to keep my mouth shut, you know. Like I said, I let the guys know this is what happened. Tell your lawyers, you know, I'll testify if you guys need me to. At the time, I'm still a sergeant, so I was like, well, that'll be the end of my career, I'm sure. But Daryl Harris comes by a little bit after that with his team. Kind of interview, kind of wants to get my opinion on things, kind of, and he does the same thing.
Common, right? For a DA to go to the academy after some incident to try to steer you.
Yeah, and he does the same thing. He shows the same little video clips, and I said, "Where's the rest? You know, where's the rest of the video? Show me the rest of the investigation." Because immediately after that, I got access to it for just a little bit, because we would get access to the shootings at the academy for training purpose and for rehabbing some of these officers and kind of talking through their issues. But it was immediately removed, right? And so I didn't get to see a whole lot of it. So I asked him, can we see more? You know, and it was like, no. And so I started telling him, I was like,
you don't want the facts.
Yeah. This is, would you agree that this is a bad shoot? I was like, no. Well, would you agree that the tactics are wrong? I said, not even that. I said, there's a million ways to handle a call, and every single officer is going to handle it differently, depending on what he sees, depending on his knowledge and his experience and what information he has at the time, you know. I said, so you can't come in and Monday morning quarterback say, well, he did it wrong, because he's going off of what he knows at that moment, you know. And Daryl's giving me all this information about information they should have had and should have known and blah, blah, blah. And so he was like, okay, he was kind of disappointed. And this was the first time I'm meeting Daryl. They come around 3 more times, and then they have me go to the district attorney's office with a group of...
Was he trying to get you as a tactics supervisor on their side?
Yes.
For testimony
yes.
sake?
Yes, 100%. And so this other group, minus Daryl, they kind of do the same thing, and I told them the same thing. I told Daryl from the get-go about this meeting. I was like, this was flawed from the beginning. The investigation is flawed because they arrested these guys before they were even able to complete an investigation. They could not have done it in 2 hours. They could not have looked at all the body cam or even gone through all the reports by that time, you know, much less, you know, completed an investigation, determined these guys are guilty, you know. And he's like, did you just say that? I said, yeah. And they told me if I opened my mouth, I was going to lose my position. And I said, I'm telling you, I already know this is getting back to the captain, right? And I told all 3 of his groups, and then I told them again in their own office. And at the office, the guys were like, you're genuinely a good guy, Sarge. We're probably not going to use you on the stand, right? And I was like, wow.
That's a bad thing, right? You're
right.
generally a good guy, but I'm sorry, I can't use you. You're
right,
too
right.
ethically sound.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your ethics are in conflict with what my agenda is, so we're just going to set you over here.
And that was the last time they talked to
so
me.
when you see that stuff, is it just me? Like when you see that, you go to a meeting, you have the chief, you have all of those people that are in positions next to the chief and have to keep their mouth shut, right? I mean, it is what it is, right? One of those DCs starts a descent. Won't be a DC for long. But nonetheless, there's a moral compass, right? It just says, look, I can't be a part of this shit. If you want to demote me, demote me. But you see all that, then you have the DA coming out there, which is highly unusual and almost tells you you're too ethical.
Right.
Do you like when you see the patrolman on the operational people say, man, that used to be a good guy until he got promoted, or you see this stuff, they're spot on. But now you're seeing everyone, and I'm going to use this word, I know what this word means, but I'm going to use it anyway. They're all being complicit in this.
Oh,
They're all
absolutely.
being complicit in
Yes.
this. No one is saying, time out, right? What does that do to you? Because I know at one point we're going to ask you,
Because it
they
starts
even
from the
asked you to
top.
come up with a training scenario or a lesson plan not to shoot someone with a hammer. Yeah, and it's like, what do you mean don't shoot someone with a hammer? You know, it's almost to the point where it makes you just physically ill to hear this stuff.
Let's ask Nancy Pelosi's husband
Yeah.
about
A hammer.
a hammer, shall
That's a
we?
good
100%. Yeah, it makes you sick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made me sick. It made me sick because everybody that's known me, from a patrolman all the way up, super highly motivated. I'm trying to do my best, trying to do what's right out there all the time. You know, I'm all about taking care of the citizens out there. As a detective, same. I chose to stay as a UEDI for 11 years because I like being out on patrol and I like being part of that. And it got to the point where even my sergeants would come to me like, "Head, what do you think we should do in this situation?" Because I've been on patrol longer than some of my sergeants, you know, at that point. And so I very much liked that, the grunt work, you know, the frontline work, if you would. And so even before the sergeant, kind of motivating my peers, like, "Hey, dude, let's go, man, let's go take care of this." As a sergeant, I started, after this meeting, started feeling very sick inside because I'm motivating these guys to do really well, to go out and work and to bust their ass, to take care of this city, knowing full well that this department is going to bury them if they do anything right that the media might perceive as wrong.
But how would you feel if you conduct this training? Because you did design training, didn't you? And, you know, for that stupid reason. But how would you feel if whoever you trained went out and there was, all of a sudden you see someone got shot, or got, not shot, but pummeled with a hammer, you know, because you had conducted this training to throw this down? Because we're already talking about these people don't go hands on anyway. You know what I mean? But to even go further with that and go, oh, my training tells me it's a hammer. It's not that deadly. So let me do whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, the whole scenario about this, and excuse me, it was like, you know, the way they painted this picture, and we'll get to your, like, even in your testimony, I think, where, you know, Sota was saying that she was shot when she was against the hallway. Like, like, no, dude, that's not where she was shot. And it's also, not only did she charge and y'all discharged, I think they missed her on the first volley, then she charged again with a hammer.
Right.
And you guys had to lay this out that, you know, the whole reaching, lunging distance, the blunt force trauma that could have been, you know, invoked on that, you know, all of those things were just missed. And now they're telling you to create a curriculum for new officers, probably even teach it to veteran officers and in service, that if you see someone with a hammer, don't engage them. You know, I mean, just how ludicrous that is.
I know, it's absurd.
Right?
There was a lot of absurd, what would appear absurd to normal police officers that were trying to get pushed down, and I just couldn't. In the meeting, let me go back to the meeting. Their big thing was, well, she was behind a door. I remember them saying that was a big deal to them, behind the door, right?
Platt was on that.
And I can
A
tell
lot,
you,
right?
Yeah.
On its face value, anybody would look at it that way.
Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, let's be honest, right?
Yeah, yeah.
On its face value, you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
But then that's what the details are for, right? That's where, like, a true investigation is for, right?
as a young officer working Southside, somewhere off Pleasanton, I remember I get a call for family violence, and as I'm rolling up, I see the lady running out of the house, and guy's behind her. She jumps into a car as I'm starting to exit the car. The guy has it's a bat, but it's not a real bat. It's not even, it's a small, like,
Those little mini souvenir bags.
yeah, like a souvenir. It's
Yeah.
wooden. I think it had Astros on it or something. You know, it's not a very big bat. She jumps into her car. I guess she saw me rolling up. And as I'm getting out to confront him, he swings that bat at the windshield. And it, one swing, whack, goes right through that windshield, smacks her in her face, and just obliterates her face, right? her teeth were protruding through the bottom of her lip and things like that. So in my mind, after that, I don't care if somebody's behind a glass door, you know, I don't. And so from them saying that, I'm like, you guys have no real experience on the streets. By saying, okay, there's a glass door, therefore you can't shoot, you know, makes no sense to me.
Very few on that command staff that have that experience feel like they need to be muted or muzzled, and they won't come out and say that. You know what the difference is between a regulation bat and that commemorative bat or that souvenir bat is when it hits you? Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
No.
But I want to make a point about that right there, what you just said. You witnessed that. You saw it in real life, okay? Now, when we go back to Graham versus Connor, which is what I saw it in Thomas and Carlos's case, and I saw it in this one. These people are going by hindsight. All these stupid fucking opinions are going by hindsight. And again, it's human nature. I understand it. But you have to break things down like we did in this trial. You know, like they should have afforded them before the arrest and all this other stuff. But I tell people this. It's not just, and it's based on the totality of the circumstances, again, through the officer's eyes at the time. Now, each officer has different levels of experience, years of experience, types of experience whatsoever. But I also tell people that it's important to know, which, and we'll get to a little bit of like where you're talking about asking the right questions of these people. And through a statement that probably could have, if it had, you know, been an issue, to say, well, I remember, you know, if you were one of those officers, well, I had a call, you know, last month.
Handled a call the year before where a woman was beaten to death with a hammer.
Okay. And again, so
He
that's in his
handled that
mind,
murder absolutely,
and not in their mind
Right.
necessarily, but what happened to you, that's in your mind. So in a pinch, when you're under stress and things are moving and you know you got to make those quick reactions, these things, we're always trying to catch up. So that burns deep in your mind to go, oh, fuck, I got to do something because I don't want that to happen to me or someone else. You know what I mean? And again, that's, thank God, in the past, they came up with that case.
And that's the difference between being a street officer and being a desk officer, right? And, you know, I mean, everybody up there, with the exception of McManus, came through this department, but not everybody that goes through this department works on that level of streets, right? We talked about, there's a lot of easy road people, right? Finding that easy road, you know, about, okay, you know,
oh, I
kind of
stay
finding
here
this,
2 years, I check this
you know,
box, I get
be friends with this person
I
and here,
check
and then
this
what?
box.
Maybe I'll go to homicide as a
Yeah,
sergeant,
I
but
check
know
that
nothing
box.
about it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the DC or the AC
Yes.
likes me, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Check
so,
those
I mean,
boxes so I can keep moving up.
Yeah.
So my resume looks good.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know shit from Shinola about those subjects because I didn't stay there long enough to learn the job, but I checked that box.
Yeah. And that happens.
Well, people should come in again to this, and I think a lot of the officers did. And I definitely at this table with, I'm going to come in with open eyes because I came in at 22, you know, and I just want to soak in everything. I want to learn everything about, I wasn't even one of those kids that grew up in a neighborhood where I saw the cops. You know, I grew up in the country. Every once in a while we'd see the sheriff, but, you know, they weren't answering calls because my neighbor was a drunk and beating the shit out of people or whatever. So I didn't grow up that way, you know, and what I had, of course, back then was just ideas of what police work is like from movies and TV and stuff like that. But I came in and this is a fucking exciting job. It is a fucking blast, you know, and I tell people, you know, did 33 years, I had a great time. You know, I was in the era of when you can do shit and people backed you up for doing that stuff. You know what I mean? And now it just seems like this department has gone away from the true mission of protecting society to play in politics and try to perform a charade that we are protecting society, because one of that is the bullshit crime stats that I don't believe in, you know, creating that stupid the crime hotspot initiative that, you know, is just to me a front for stuff.
Look at the expansion of SAFE, Willie. Those are the feel good, hold your hand, pat you on the back officers. You guys probably aren't old enough. God, I hate having to say this, but this is the same cycle that occurred after the 60s and the early 70s. Policing took on this same idiot Marxist ideology where the police were the problem. And they backed off. And that led directly to the crack epidemic and the street gang epidemic, which is when we kind of started coming on, that the public had had enough of the streets being run by the criminals. And that's why we were allowed to do our jobs. And
So
we did our
We learned
jobs.
nothing from the lessons of the
Absolutely
past.
not.
but we have a different group of people now that we're trying to satisfy.
No, but it's the same mentality.
No, I
is what I'm saying.
wholeheartedly agree with you. But what we have is that, because we always talk about the pendulum. The pendulum swings one way, and then eventually
Yes.
the pendulum's going to swing back this way, and you're
Yes.
talking about the
But there's
60s.
a whole
Yes.
different dynamic with that too now.
No,
of
because we
people-
have leftists who will never, I would love to.
But
I-
that's what happened during the 60s. That's when you had the Marxist ideology taking root with the Black Panthers and the Weather Underground and the riots on the college campuses. That's when the policing changed to the same thing. And you know what changed it at that time was the shootout with the FBI with those robbers.
The robbery
That's-
suspect.
Yeah, that's what brought us our ideology of policing is police run the streets, not the criminals. That they had that same transformation during the 60s and 70s, which brought us the outrageous 80s and 90s.
And that was from a time when you didn't even have social media.
Right.
People couldn't even weigh in instantaneously.
Right.
Now you have
Right.
like boom, I can fuel those emotional flames anytime I want.
Well, so
Truth or not.
when these trials were going on live, they didn't have comments on them. If you go and look at them now, you'll see comments on them. And so you'll see a lot of dumbasses go, oh, that's bullshit. Those
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
those
yeah.
cops, especially particularly when you guys were on the stand. Oh, of course, there's cops covering cops again. They'll do anything to to do this.
That's hilarious.
And like I think it was Facebook, some dude, it wasn't a friend of mine, but he said those guys are guilty. They should fry. They should never be free again. Yada yada. And you go to the profile and you look at him. It's like this guy looks like somebody's dad. He doesn't look like some dipshit with these hoop earrings that you see and all these other things you might expect from. But he and I'm like, so I have to say something to this motherfucker,
Yes.
So I'm like, so I guess 12 people that viewed all the evidence over 1 month long were wrong, and
you're right.
Yeah, you're right. There's no better of a validation of their innocence was this process, and it's good. And you guys saw it live. We saw it live. How many times did they ask for a mistrial?
Oh God, I stopped
Directed
counting.
I counted
Yeah,
5.
directed verdicts.
I counted 5.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one or two more that I missed. Director verdict, maybe 4.
Yeah.
But this was the best outcome that could have happened for those guys.
Well, that's a great
Right.
way to get to Lisa's testimony. When you're talking about mistrials and directed verdicts, because when you were on the stand, you got like a front seat to some very spirited objections and exchanges between the defense and
I know.
and it was fun to watch, right?
Yeah, it was.
And you could see Nico, right? Like he
Yep.
loves antagonizing people.
Yep.
And and then Ben was making his usual very
Stoic,
stoic
very
kind of objection.
blunt,
I'm telling
yes.
you again, that's why I asked for the mistrial.
Yep.
And then, Jason Goss would jump in there. But when you were on the stand and you took the stand and you got a chance to see that, because they halted your testimony quite a few times to do that. That had been interesting, right? Because I know you're watching, and I just want to compliment you now. I thought you did such a good job. I mean, all of you did a good job, but I thought you were very conscious about working with the jury, a lot of eye contact with the jury, a lot of making them feel involved. I'm speaking to you.
Yes.
You're the decision maker. I think that's a veteran move. I think the other veteran move that I joked with you right before you started, you paint this very pastel picture.
Yeah. They
But,
had no idea
But
what
you know,
a raving
and I was
bitch I
telling
can
Willie earlier on the phone, I think I said, you set the tone, and it was a total veteran move, because the minute you got on there and Daryl Harris started talking to you, you said, yeah, I remember when you were a baby prosecutor.
be. Yep.
And that just, in his mind, that says, okay, I knew you when. And
Yeah.
now that, and those are little nuances that people don't know. That's like Soto don't know that, right? Pratt, whatever.
Flat.
She doesn't know that. And, even, and you got in his head because at some point later, you bring something up, and he says, "You're making me." Oh, I don't know what.
Oh, and when he said, "You're going to have to trust me,"
Yes,
I
yes.
have
And you
the
said,
latest.
I don't trust you, Mr. Harris.
Yeah.
And then he
yeah.
says, "You make me feel like a baby prosecutor."
That
man."
was the whole intention,
so,
dear.
but you got in his head, right?
Yeah.
And then a couple of times, without the specific testimony of it, but you at one point he asked you to read the arrest affidavit, and you said he brings you down about what Soto didn't add, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what your point was, and you said, "Well, we're skipping a bunch here, but is that by design?"
Yeah.
And then you pause and you says, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm used to being in charge of these investigations."
Yes.
And those are total veteran moves because you're dictating the pace
Yeah.
and you're running the
especially
show.
Someone like Daryl, because I'd already witnessed him. I worked with Daryl a little bit on that serial rapist that was in the medical center.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. We never went to trial, so, or they didn't call me, at least. But I think it did go to trial, didn't it? Yeah, it did go to trial. But they didn't call me because I arrested the guy, But that's why I met Daryl and kind of knew his demeanor a little bit. And then I witnessed a lot of him in the Carlos and Thomas trial. And Daryl, I guess he was Army, and he carries himself and he's very loud.
Yes.
Talks like that,
Yes.
and whatever. And so when you kind of see when he gains confidence and all that. But I do, because he and I were talking, we were laughing about it, in fact, on the way. You knocked the fuck out of this guy. When you said that, he just slumped. Yeah. And like you said, you set that tone.
You set the tone.
Like, oh shit, I'm not walking up to
I might be
somebody.
the witness, but I'm the one that's running this show.
Right.
And that's not easy to get, right? It's almost like your homicide
Especially from him.
reference. You have to learn how to do the job.
Okay, so there was a comment on one of the posts that some lady said, that lady in that red suit acts like she's the smartest person in the room.
I saw that.
Well, Butch and I laughed about that because you have to convince yourself that you are. That's how you get over on people, by saying, ain't a swinging dick in here that knows more about my job than I do.
Yeah.
Ask me anything. Ask me anything.
Well, that's why I couldn't
about
wait to
my
get on the
job.
stand and talk about
I know.
tactics. Because
Yes, ask me anything.
the issues, like say with y'all, is that Daryl has an idea of the law related to the investigations.
Yes.
He doesn't know shit about tactics.
No.
He might think he does.
No.
You know what I mean? And I also wanted to refute Joyner and his bullshit.
Yeah.
But those comments come from those people that don't even want to take the time to look further because they've already made up their mind.
Sure.
They already have this disdain for the police somewhat, or maybe
Yeah,
they're
that's
on
why
the
they're
fence.
entertaining.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. And so, because I saw comments that are talking about Ben, and I love Ben to
Oh.
death. We were calling him the mad scientist.
Yes.
Like this dude is sitting there,
Yes.
putting things together. And
My favorite comment was from some dolt who said, and I will quote her, "These defense attorneys suck. All they want to talk about is the law."
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I saw that. But you know what? And it transforms. And
God.
sitting in on this trial here, I saw a lot of the same things that I saw in the Carlos and Thomas trial. That was only a week long, mind you, but I saw a lot of the same things that from Daryl. And obviously, we already knew this was a political persecution from the beginning on that one. I felt like at some point, and then on this one, because he got hung up a lot on you. There were long pauses, and he's looking through his notes, and he's doing this, and he's like doing that. Yeah. And then he's asking you shit that doesn't even follow the line of questioning.
Right.
Right? So I felt like at some point, and especially in Thomas and Carlos's trial, that Daryl was going to get up and go, look, I get the law. Let's not talk about that right now. But look, these two big bad policemen just beat up a black guy. Like, can't we just agree that they're bad and we just need to convict him for it? Because he had nothing else.
I think Daryl Harris is dangerous in this regard. Like he'll almost play like a Columbo kind of guy. He'll stumble over stuff, but then he might actually get someplace good, but he don't really know he got someplace good. I think that's the problem I have with Daryl Harris. Like he's not an A-list attorney, but he's just dangerous enough to stumble into something that he didn't really know he stumbled into.
I think he's dangerous because he has an agenda.
Oh, he has an agenda for sure.
Well, so
And that agenda,
mentioning the Carlos Thomas trial, he got spanked because I saw that humbleness big time on that one, because that one did end in a mistrial, and it was because they didn't reveal, almost much like this with what's his name, with Joyner, about revealing Brady material. And when they did that, and you know me, that was like my first trial, and I'm sitting there and I'm, because I've watched Daryl this whole time, his demeanor, you know, I object and blah blah blah, you know, sitting there in front of the judge like a little boy who just pissed his pants, is embarrassed about it. And I was like, wow, what happened to this guy? You know, and the judge, this judge, either he had a strong idea that this was going to end up this way, because he hardly considered mistrials. On that other one, he says, okay, we'll take a break. I'll come back, give you my answer tomorrow. In this one, I just felt like, let's just let it go through the process. And I initially thought, maybe I'm not wrong, that there was a political ideology, or not ideology, but agenda for him not making that decision to end in a mistrial.
I would agree.
You know what I'm saying?
I would agree.
do you think that case humbled him? Getting a verdict in 40 minutes humbled these proof prosecutors beyond, because that means you guys suck so bad you couldn't even get them to deliberate past a lunch.
But you understand, within that 40 minutes, they ate lunch and did not discuss the trial.
That's what I'm saying.
At all.
So you know,
Well, they were,
being
like I said, they made it in,
prosecutors.
it was 15 minutes. They made that decision in 15 minutes, but they,
After lunch.
out of respect,
Yes.
they didn't want to come out too soon because they bought them lunch. So
Imagine
these people were like, you know, I didn't want to show up and eat and leave. You know what I mean? Is what it was.
You know, and I don't know Daryl Harris, but I do know David Lunan. I knew him when he came on, like the baby prosecutor kind of statement. And you know, I think he's a pretty good attorney. But these guys were biting off big pieces of things that they really couldn't digest, and it just made no sense. And it looked like it made no sense. It was like they were just throwing stuff to see maybe what would stick.
When have you ever had officers come testify for the state and have to be given an attorney and take the fifth to prevent them from testifying for the state?
I don't think anybody's ever seen that.
Well, I mean, and we said that in one of the podcasts. It offered so many different things. Like, you don't see
insane.
that a lot, right? And then, but they were threatening to charge him with burglary, right?
Yes.
And then the other guy, the same attorney, came in, and he decided to continue to testify, right? And then they were offering immunity to some, but not others.
Yes.
And then you had said that there were 7 out there that had pulled their weapons, and 3 of them fired, and you had talked to 3 of the other 4.
Yes.
But they didn't talk to 3 of the other 4. You know, and it's like, what is this a game to you?
Absolutely.
You know, is this a
Absolutely.
joke?
And you know what?
You know?
Nobody has mentioned, but I want to take this opportunity to talk about Travis Thompson. And that young man needs some kudos for saying, yes, I know you gave me an attorney, and I know my attorney is telling me to take the fifth, but screw that. I'm getting on the stand to talk about what I know and saw.
Yeah.
He said that.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, that's
Walter Thompson.
Walter
He's out of our
Thompson's
class. Yeah, the
son.
dad's out of our class.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Marmaduke.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's Marmaduke's
Okay.
boy.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, it sure is.
Wow.
And so he's relatively new officer. He's not been on with, any kind of pension in the near future. But he said, no, I know you're telling me not to testify, but I'm going to go testify.
That's awesome.
And that's that conviction, I mean, you could just see it. We've talked about it before, we talked about it briefly on why you testified and why Butch testified. It's just that underlying sense of, I got to do the right thing. To your point, right? You got to do the right thing.
Well, we've always talked about our brother officers and brother and sister officers, and they talk about the blue line and covering each other and stuff like that. And I want to say, maybe you can agree, because we were talking about it, I never, out of all the stuff that I had done, being on SWAT, because what they say, SWAT shows up when officers call 911, doing stuff like that, training people, and then being on rope, kind of doing the same thing a little bit. I never felt more righteous than when I sat next to those guys in Thomas and Carlos's trial. Like, finally, I feel like I'm doing something, which is stupid, because I did do something, you know what I mean? But I felt like, these guys, I could see the real danger of these guys, number one, becoming felons.
Yeah.
And no policeman we had this discussed for that.
Going to prison.
Yeah, I've been going to prison for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that here I am sitting next to these guys, helping them stay out of that. You know?
Well, that's how I got involved. I'm sitting at home watching the news, and their mugshots pop up, and I'm thinking, Alejandro worked for me on West Dog Watch. That man's about a murderer like I am.
So I have a question. This is going to be a harder question. If you don't want, I've said this before. If you're not, don't want to answer, don't answer. But I'm going to ask the question anyway because we brought it up on the podcast. Nick's working on editing right now. Do you think Soto should be Brady'd?
No, but I think he needs to be transferred.
Yeah.
Why not?
Do I think he should be what?
Oh,
Brady.
Brady'd.
Put on the Brady list.
Oh,
And I know you said this already that you don't like to talk bad about policemen.
And if you don't want to answer it,
Yeah.
I mean, on this last podcast, I said, hey, at what point when you said purposeful omission, see, I got that right. I was working on the
Yeah,
purposeful thing.
nice.
You know, and so at what point does that become lying? And you have to take that now into context, right? Like what context? You know, you omitted things from an affidavit and you swore to that affidavit. And you're on the stand and you swore that you made the decision with Van Geffen and then you said you made it on yourself by yourself,
Yeah.
which we clearly know you couldn't, right?
Yeah,
And so,
he did.
so at what point, and I said, yeah, his ass should be Brady. And I said, and even if they don't Brady him, because I want your opinion, I'm just going to explain my position. You know, I even if they don't Brady him, because the DA actually knew what Harris was involved at the academy, was involved at the headquarters, you know, even if they don't Brady him, he's rendered totally ineffective because I know that even if you're not formally Brady'd, trial attorneys, defense attorneys can go to any sitting judge and says, hey, I have questions about his credibility.
Yeah.
This is the place, the location, the case, and what was said.
That's why I think he needs to be
And so-
transferred.
I don't think they're going to Brady him, but I think he should be Brady.
But
And there's been a lot of officers on the
who
department.
puts him on the Brady list?
The DA's office.
Because he was helping them. Why
Right.
would they put this guy on the Brady list?
Right.
Well, I mean, I totally get that, and I agree that they're not. But I'm telling you, he's going to be rendered ineffective wherever he goes because I know of people that have gone, not been Brady, but
Yes.
every time they go, any defense attorney worth their salt is going to say to that sitting judge, county or district,
He's
says,
not credible.
he's not credible.
Yep.
And so those are issues. So, what are your thoughts?
well, I think you have to look at the bigger picture too. I think you have to not just consider him, but I think you have to consider everybody else that's going to do his job. I think he should be, and I think that sends a message that when you're going to take somebody's freedom away from them or try to, you better have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And you better be able to explain it. You better be able to. You better be able to prove what you're saying, the accusations that you're making.
Absolutely, 100%.
Without being
you said that so
flippantly.
well. Yeah, because one of the points I made before is like I didn't feel like they prepared very well. The first officer, Rojas, maybe, right, and then the second one, Ramos, and then even with Pratt, and then back to now Soto. I didn't think they really prepared very well. I thought, and so in the first podcast, I make the statement, what did you think was going to happen? Like, did you think it was just a joke? You know, I would have been looking at my prosecutor, I would have been looking at everything in my packet. I would have known it. If I was the patrolman, I would have went and looked at what are the rules, how do we deal with mentally ill people, what the procedure is. No one expects you to say them verbatim, which I thought Jonathan Salinas did a good job. He couldn't say them verbatim,
Right.
but he knew them.
Right.
And I said on the second podcast that he's still working, I said, I'll challenge McManus right now. I'd love for Dylan Collier to walk up to him and says, hey, talk to me about procedure this,
Right.
because he can't do
He
it.
wouldn't have a clue.
But I think you have to understand it. And they didn't take it serious. So to your point, I think it's all fun and games until you're the one being pressed for it. And I don't think he was ready to be pressed for it. And I think he should be Brady because I think he misrepresented the truth. And no matter how you color that, that's a lie. And if it's not, if you don't want to call it a lie, because you said it's close to lying, but maybe not necessarily lying,
Yeah.
that purposeful deception,
Yeah.
I think in our positions, we're expected to do better. Because our credibility is, they're already taking our reports out of it, right? They don't even want to see our reports anymore. They just want to see videos.
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
now our word doesn't mean anything anymore. So I know you said you don't think he should be Brady. Can you tell me why?
Because here's my frustration with him. He had no training in investigations, and I'm talking none when he handled this case. He had not been to one training seminar in how to do follow-up investigations. Zero training in murder or unequivocal deaths. Zero training in officer-involved shootings, and he had no experience. So they gave him this case. Evidently, in his arrogance, he believed he didn't need training or experience and he could handle it. So because he is inexperienced and arrogant, I think
that was by design too.
I don't
think so.
I don't. I
think he was just up.
Yeah, he was up, and so here's the case. Here you go, by a bunch of doofuses who have no idea.
So not having training, does that like, back in the old fraction?
Well, I came from night CID.
No, but what I'm saying
So-
is, so not having training, does that squash the fact that you were under oath?
No, but my point is, in his investigation, he was so arrogant that he thought he could handle this investigation. He legitimately reached the conclusions that he did. And then when you're talking about confirmation bias, is most often subconscious, that you're going to pick out the things that confirm your bias. So subconsciously, I think, is a possibility that he picked out the things that confirmed.
So when he
his
said on the
conclusion.
stand, not to interrupt you, but just to kind of further the point, right, the discussion. When he said on the stand, that decision was made by me. That's not truthful.
Unless he was not at that meeting and he reached this brilliant.
Well, he originally said he made the decision with Van Geffen.
Yes.
We jointly made the decision.
Yes.
And then he came back and says, no, I made the decision. When he said that there was no command influence, you believe that
But the other part of that, before we forget, or I forget, Daryl let him say that.
Yes.
Daryl let him
And
say
Daryl
that.
knows damn well
Well,
that was not
brings
his
up another
decision alone.
Well, here's the thing. Again, that's his arrogance for him to say, I reached this conclusion on my own. I didn't need anybody to influence me. Dude, you don't have the authority to reach
Yeah.
that decision
Yeah.
on your own.
And we all know.
Right off the bat.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so again, that's his arrogance coupled with his ignorance, that he believes he has
So this
capabilities
is where
that he does not have.
my big problem comes in, is that all of us have worked in the police department, and you're like the perfect newest example, right? Where you have been subject to this command influence. Hey, I don't want to hear you. You're here. Shut up. Don't say nothing or you'll get transferred, right? You were in timeout. Lord knows I went round and round with them for doing what I thought was the right thing. We all have our own versions of it, right? But we can never say anything because we're always under the umbrella of the chief and the administration.
Mhm.
But when you're under oath, you have the trump card. You have the trump card.
Yes.
Okay, man, I didn't like the fact that you gave me up. Man, I was under oath, and I don't violate that oath for anyone.
Right.
Like, he didn't say, yeah, I didn't make the decision. He didn't say, I wasn't told, but I was strongly advised or influenced, or I was kind of nudged. He didn't say any of that.
No, he didn't, and Butch explained why.
Yeah, and Butch also said that was absolutely untruthful. So if you're untruthful under oath, you have no alternative but to be brave.
He fell on his sword to keep his position.
Yeah.
I felt sorry. So I know Soto, and we didn't hang out or anything, but I know him. I used to see him a lot at the gym, and we talk all the time. And I think he worked street crimes at some point, or a scat, whatever the fuck it was back then. And I felt sorry for him to begin with, until I saw that arrogance and that conviction that they did wrong. Because if he was voluntold to do this, you'd see him struggle to answer certain questions. His body language didn't show that.
Well, his reports could have reflected that. I was ordered to file this
Sure.
case. That's
But I kind of reposted it on social media because Nico's got a TikTok account, and they put a clip of when he said, what we do know for sure was that she was never going to let go of that hammer.
that was her
When
only
he-
weapon.
When he said that, I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And again, I still feel bad for him because, you know, I won't say it's just all him. Obviously, we know that he's a very small piece of that, but the other part is that I don't think he realizes is that, look, man, this could be you in their shoes, and you would enjoy the same scrutiny we gave that happened in this trial.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't matter. You're not immune from that same bullshit. And I think a lot of officers, and if you motherfuckers are listening, and sometimes I cuss to say this to make a point because I'm so passionate about it, is that there's no reason this can't be you.
Right.
Absolutely no reason, unless you are fucking, you know, again, we can even deal with it off duty too, right? Yeah. It can be an off duty incident because you carry, you know, that authority as well, that you think you're doing the right thing and you leave there, which is one of the things that I want to quickly say about the arresting them so soon on these warrants. And you said it, they were not a flight risk. They weren't a danger to the rest of the public. What was the need to hurry and put these guys in jail?
That was all political theater.
Right. Well, it was the optics of it. But that's what I'm saying with this, is that Soto didn't realize, you know better than these guys. You could have been you had you been working that same position in whatever way, and you were just burying these guys along with, now the DA is the DA. They're not cops. They don't have the same, you know, ethics and morals that we have. So you can kind of say, I'm not saying I give them a pass, but you can understand that. But you, motherfucker,
I know of
you're
a sitting
supposed
judge,
to be, a
sitting judge that told me, that used to be in the DA's office, that told me if I was in the DA's office, I would have quit before I would have tried this case.
And who did that? Mulliner.
Yeah, oh,
quit,
yeah, Jeff did, yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
quit, and this, I think this case had a lot
Wait,
to
so
do
did
with it.
somebody else. There was somebody in between Molnar and,
Yeah, it was there not very long. I remember.
No, he was.
oh, it was Anita. It was a female.
He
Yes.
I wanted to
testified.
ask you too, man. I know we get a little chatty, but you think he should be Brady?
I think so. I know it won't happen, but yeah, I thought so right from the beginning.
Well, there's a lot of people in the police department that have been,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, what do? You're rendered ineffective, right? And it can be even for like a misunderstanding. I know people. I don't want to talk too much because I don't want to make them feel like I'm giving them up. But I know people that have said stuff under oath that was just misinterpreted, and they have come back. Well, let's just say gigged, right? Gigged and Brady's are the same thing. One is in federal, one is in state.
Giglio.
And so the feds wouldn't use them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as blatant as what we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. The reason I say don't put him on a Brady list is because it jeopardizes other cases that he may have touched that are righteous cases. That's the only reason I don't like Brady, is because now it becomes a free-for-all for anything that he's ever done in his career. So I say stay away from Brady, transfer him. We all know he's not worth the paper his name's written on as far as being a
Completely
witness.
ineffective.
Yeah, so transfer him out.
But I think,
And that's that.
you talked about a meeting that they had, and no one's getting transferred.
Yeah. So there was a meeting that the chief was going to go to homicide. I'm sure y'all heard about
Yep.
it. Chief was going to go to homicide, clear this up. Chief does what he always did. Didn't go. He sends Jesse Salome and
George
Suarez. And at this meeting, from what I understand, all they said was, hey, this guy went up against some of San Antonio's best defense attorneys and he'll learn from this. And one of the things that we talked about is like, hey,
Good try.
you're not
Let's
even
try it again.
invoking standards.
Yeah, we'll get it next
You're
time.
not even saying, hey, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. Like, you know what? But it goes back to the sergeant reviewed it, the lieutenant reviewed it, the captain reviewed it.
Mhm.
I guarantee you, in a case of this magnitude, Bobby Blanton had his nose in it. Everyone had their nose in it.
Yeah.
And they all signed off on it.
Yeah, they did.
You know, and that's the problem, right? Because the standards are they're just being so degraded that, to your point, homicide is now what it shouldn't be, right? Like what you said, you saw that coming, and now it's here. Right.
Yeah, I had several friends ask me, "Do you think the detective will be transferred?" I said, no, he did exactly what they wanted him to do. Why would they transfer him?
Yeah.
He will be transferred.
I think it'll be quiet.
Or he'll be put on cold case because he can't work any cases anymore without people coming in and questioning his credibility.
But you know, the week after the trial, the trial was not over. Week 3 of the trial, he was at a murder scene on a Saturday morning, the handling detective. My phone was blowing up.
What?
Lisa, Soto is the handling detective.
Well, that
this
verdict
murder.
hadn't come out yet, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, you know,
Yeah, but just
But
from
he was already,
but just
he was
from his
already
trial,
annihilated
his
on the
testimony was-
stand.
I
Yes.
tried to get the numbers, how many people watched this trial. So I tried to reach out to some people I know, and I was told, because, you know, Ken's and KSAT both did this thing. And I was told, this is proprietary information and we won't release it, right? That's what I was told. But I was also kind of said, but if you were to say 200,000 people watched this trial, you wouldn't be wrong. 200,000 people watched this trial.
Oh, yeah.
How many of the attorneys, if I was a young attorney, I'd have been glued to
That's
this
what they
thing.
told you?
Yes.
No, that's just what I might have heard.
Oh, I see.
And so, if I was a young attorney, I'd have been watching this. One is so I could watch these attorneys, and
Yeah.
two, I could
Everything
prepare
came out of
myself
this trial.
so I could prepare
Everything.
myself to handle cases in front of that judge, which is a very tenured sitting judge, and then also watch the prosecution. So, yeah, there's a lot of attorneys that watch this thing. And anytime he catches a case or whatever, I guarantee they're going to say,
Yeah.
can't trust the word coming out of this dude's mouth. So some of those cases may be reopened either way.
2 weeks ago, I met Mario and Ben. They had a case out in Medina County, and I met them for breakfast. And we're sitting there eating. They're in their go-to-court clothes. I look like a bum. We're eating. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy sitting in a booth. Never seen him before in my life. We're in Hondo, okay? It's not like we're in San Antonio. We're in Hondo. He's eating his breakfast, and he's looking at us, and you see the light bulb come on. You can see him like, these people look familiar. But then you see the light bulb come on, and he's eating, and now he's grinning while he's eating. And he gets up to leave, and he comes over to the table. He goes, just want to shake everybody's hand.
And I think that's the part that sometimes get missed, including those 12 fine people on that jury. Like they didn't get like wrapped
Yeah.
up in the noise.
Yeah.
And I think there's still more people in San Antonio that support law enforcement than don't. The problem is they're
Yes.
just too silent.
Yes.
And they're not involved enough in the election
But
process. To
Talk
make a
about
difference.
bias. How much do we have looking at the jurors? Which one of these motherfuckers is going to throw a wrench in it? You know what I mean? Just based on what we see, because we didn't get to talk to them, right? You know, right? We were all trying to read them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that look? You know,
Yes.
or whatever it was, and then
Yes.
to find out at the end, nobody had a problem.
Right. But I can tell you there was a turning point in the trial, Willie. I can tell you that with no qualms whatsoever,
What do
that
you
the
think that
first
was?
week and a half of the trial, passing them in the hall, they would not meet
Yeah.
my eyes. They would look the other way in the elevator. And I can tell you it was specifically on a Thursday after the defense took over that Thursday there were smiles in the hall.
I know what
What
you're saying.
Have a nice weekend. The defense presenting its case.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, for sure. I mean, you know, we
Yeah.
talked about the
I
attorneys
saw
and the
that too.
closing. I on this other podcast that didn't come in. I thought everybody did a good job, but I thought Mario Del Prado and Nico's just like smacked it out of the park. The closing was compelling. It was on point. You know, I won't say the whole Don Soto or San Antonio or Detective Soto is investigating, or there should be the most 3 dangerous words in the English language. Those are all things that people heard and are going to see, and it's going to affect his job performance later.
Ben's more like reading a very necessary instruction manual.
Yes.
It's boring, but it's very fucking important.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But
So
Jim-
Nico and Mario were
Yeah.
very,
Well,
and,
Ben
and
recognized
Tom
it, right.
were
Yeah, no,
very
Tom did.
passionate. And
But
Yes.
they all did
Mark-
good. But Nico has that pizzazz, right? That confident, you know, that, and like I was saying, you know, his fliction, his eye contact, his mannerisms, they were all on point. And they moved me, so I know they moved the jury. And, you know, as did all of you. You guys definitely made a difference in talking to the jury and helping them evaluate what happened in a different way than maybe they would have done it had you not have testified along with Majeka. I would say his name wrong. Marinelli, yeah.
Marinelli. See,
Marinelli, I'm
I
sorry, not
had
Marinelli,
to
no,
argue with Ben and Nico about what I was doing there. I had to argue with them that let me do what I do. It was like arguing with the homicide sergeants. Let me teach them what an investigation should be. Because right now they have nothing to compare to it.
Well, you did, right? Because I asked you what a
In
criminal
the end,
investigation is.
yes.
Yeah.
In the end, I'm telling you, I had to argue with them
I was
about.
saying earlier, I loved your Sherlock Holmes point.
Oh.
Because people can relate to Sherlock
Absolutely.
Holmes. Right? And what'd you say? I have it here. The bane of a
Listen.
criminal investigation
Yes.
is instead of. Do you know it offhand?
There's different variations of it, just the gist of it. I don't know
informing
what
a
I
theory
said
or
that
a
day.
hypothesis of what possibly happened and working until you are left with what probably happened, you jump to a conclusion before you have gathered and analyzed all of the evidence.
Yeah.
And I said, that means something, but again, that savvy veteran move like Sherlock Holmes. I like Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
Which version of it, right?
Yes.
But there were different, initially when you slapped Daryl down, that was awesome.
Did you like that point?
I-
You brought that up several times.
No, it
That was
was
the
because
best.
it was
That was
very.
the
It was
best.
enjoyable.
Right?
I was like, yes.
Yeah, you stood up and said yes, whatever. I mean, but you got to know Daryl Harris. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes.
And again, from witnessing him for however long it took for them to get to you, right? Because
Yes.
he's very loud and almost rude. Like
Yes.
there were a couple of times where you jumped when he like
Yes.
object, and he would just I was like, holy shit, what's
Yes.
up with this guy? But the other part with you, Mark, that I had a chuckle and not chuckle too loud at the, I had to chuckle to myself was when you were talking about her behavior and he says, well, like, do you, because it's going to come up, oh, are you a doctor or do you, where did you get that? And you said, well, by the way, I went through, what did you say? Like 5
the
years of
profiling
behavioral.
school,
Yeah. And then
know
it's
your
like,
audience, Daryl.
oh shit.
Know your
Yeah,
audience.
They
right.
asked you, right?
Yes.
Right.
You have it? And you go, yeah, I have it.
Know your
Profiling,
audience.
so let
Yes.
me go get it. And you
Yes.
walk
That
to the
was
gallery.
Yes.
that was another
Yes.
awesome move where I'm like, oh,
Yes.
these guys.
Yeah.
But he didn't do his homework.
Didn't do it.
Right.
How do you not know that?
I can tell you that several times in other cases, they don't know how to read an autopsy report and apply it to the crime scene. That they did a terrible job with that, and I was ready to pounce on that. But several times people have said, but you're not a doctor, are you? No. So you don't have any training in medicine? Well, actually, I was a aeromedical evacuation technician in the military, so that's like a nationally registered like EMT, but instead of doing it in an ambulance,
Right.
I did it in a C-130. So there were so many times that they came with their, you don't have any medical training, do you? No, actually I do. And it's one of those moments where you just go,
Yeah, it was very cool.
And they just went along. They just went along with you, like, oh really?
Well,
Oh really? Almost like they were interested too.
yes,
You know.
Walk to the gallery to get the documents.
Yes.
I was just like, man, that's a bold move.
Yes.
Or like when you were talking, you said something. You said, I don't know. I was in the Air Force.
Oh, yes.
and
yes.
that was
yes.
just again dismissing him, right? Like,
yes.
whatever, man. It's really cool. Are there any points that you guys would like to make for like the listeners or maybe younger investigators, patrolmen that aren't yet investigators? Anything you'd like to say to them? We'll just kind of work this way if that's. Well, let's do it this way. We've kind of neglected you. Ed, you got anything you want to say?
To the investigation, no. To Daryl Harris, this is what got me. Like the first time we went out to the academy, didn't know this guy from anybody. You know how we are, Ed. Somebody hurts one of our guys.
Grabbed him like he grabbed you by the.
Yeah,
Like he hugged,
somebody
like a
hurts one
hug.
of our guys, we're gonna get them. We know these guys, messed up, and I get it,
Like
Ed,
it was a
because
retaliation.
I get it, Ed, because you get in that moment and you just like, hey, this guy, she chunked a candle at the guys, and we're gonna get her. I'm like, no. First of all, there's no we.
Yeah.
you're not one of us.
Right.
And no, that's not the way it goes. And from that point on, I was like, so when you did what you did on the stand, I was like,
Yeah, you know,
That was for Ed.
Good
Yeah.
for you for like saying there's no we, right?
Yeah.
Because there's definitely no we.
there's
You're
no
right.
we.
You said there's an agenda, or somebody said there's an agenda with him. There's an absolute agenda with him.
Well, and I wanted to make a point to that, what you just said. What happened with Thomas and Carlos in that case, they ended in a mistrial after a week. Again, because of their ineptitude. That was their screw up that caused that mistrial. Darrell Hell, they kicked him out of that unit, the civil rights unit.
Yeah.
And over, I don't know, the time frame between that case and this one, they brought him back because everybody else had left. Right? So when you talk about that right person to be in that unit, Darrell Harris is the guy, because he's not going to ask questions like, why would we do that? Like Mulliner, or whatever. And I've said this, and I'll say it again, the Civil Rights Division should be more aptly called the fuck all cops unit. Because that's
the only
their
reason
whole
it's there.
agenda is to fuck over policemen. And again, learning from this trial, when the hell does a DA go to the scene of a crime like that? Initially, they kind of stay out of it because they trust the department to do what they need to do because they're part of the process until it gets to us. And then when the hell does the DA go to the academy?
Let's start running their own investigation.
Well, I didn't even know that they made all officer involved shootings. I didn't know that.
That's recent. I mean, when did they start doing that?
And why
Right
would you
before you
why would
retired?
you do that?
Yeah,
Like,
it was
why?
before I retired. They probably did it the last
Under
couple
Joe,
of
right?
years.
When Joe took office, right?
Yeah.
And so
But they're not looking at it through visions of going, let's see how we can, because we're the good guys. Let's see how they're not. I don't think they're looking at it
for
like that.
wrongdoing. period.
Yes.
Yeah, and just the
Or
calling it
something
civil
that they
rights.
can call wrongdoing. Like you mentioned, Soto said, I just needed the probable cause. Well,
Yeah, what
shit. And something, I think someone mentioned it, I don't know which one of y'all it was, or if it was even y'all, talked about something called inattentive blindness. So when you already have this bias that these guys fucked up, then you're going to go in there and all you're looking for is a probable cause. This is what I need. This is what I need. You're also not paying attention to the exculpatory stuff that
Right.
he did not understand.
That's the
That would
confirmation
change your
bias.
mind on that.
We're not looking to have a
No,
mind change.
no,
My
no.
mind's made up.
Yeah.
I need to find the stuff that
Well, you had
supports.
said that at one point. You
Yeah.
said at that point, once he made up his mind, he was tailoring his prosecution guide to fit the narrative.
Absolutely.
From that moment on, all
Yes.
they were trying to do was validate the narrative.
Yes.
And that's a horrible thing for any investigator to do.
That's
'Cause
how
you're not an
innocent
investigator
people get
anymore.
sent to
You're
prison.
a propagandist.
Yeah, that's how innocent people get sent to
Yeah.
prison, and that's why I brought up the cold cases. When somebody says, "Look at this cold case with fresh eyes," that's why.
Mhm.
Because somebody was focused on this when it was actually that.
Right. So anything you want to add?
Yeah,
Say? New
the-
investigators?
The department is remiss in not training these investigators. Look, they're patrolmen. They make detective. They're UEDIs, which is just a fancy patrolman. And then they're put in an investigative unit with no training whatsoever. So the department's not going to train you. You better go find some training on your own if you want to know how to do your job.
The other part is almost overnight, a lot of the experience is left. So
Yes.
without just the training that to go to a course or whatever goes with the experienced officer that I think one of y'all mentioned that he should have shadowed somebody
Yes.
rather than be the lead detective on it,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Soto, I mean.
Yes.
and what you're saying is very true. Remember when we worked director patrol back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s? People knew how to be police officers back then. If we went back to that style of policing again, we don't have the people
No.
here.
No, they're
that
not
know
left.
how
There's
to
no
do
one
it.
left.
We could solve the crime problem fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, but we've lost. We'd have to bridge that gap. We've lost that generation of police officers that used to know how to do it.
And
Yes.
and that's by design.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
That's tailored.
who would want to
Yes.
come in knowing you're going to get indicted?
Well, they're stopping you from like they don't want aggressive policemen.
No.
Because we used to say, because at one point you worked when we were doing the CRU stuff, remember back in, and we would get those guys come out and you would do it, and a bunch of us would do it, right? And I was a sergeant with Pat Mahalik and I think Steve Velasquez, right? And
Chris
so we
Anderson.
would come out there and you guys knew how to go out there and do it, but now it's by design. They don't want aggressive policemen because the way we did it, we're going to contact you. If you're on the street, you're getting contacted. You're a good citizen, have a nice day, we're here to support you. If you're a bad guy, we're getting in your lives. They don't want that anymore.
No.
And so, to your point, now how do you get that back when you have an entire generation now,
You have
7, 8 years?
the FTOs have 2
They
and
don't
3
do it.
years on. Am I
No.
lying?
1 year on.
Well, you know why that
They're
is.
as low as
I know
1
you
year
probably
on.
know that why that is, but I'll just say it for the listeners because they used to give. There's money that comes with an FTO, right? Was it $250, something like that? Is that right? It's been a while.
250.
350.
Oh, is it
Yeah.
350? Yeah, I think it's 350.
So-
I can't remember. I'm not
And I was a field training sergeant. I forgot, right? So, but but now they can make so much that they can make that money up in Districtville. So why do I not be bothered with things that you won't let me teach a young officer the right way to be a
Right.
young officer? So now they're getting younger people to step into the FTO's position. One, because they get an FTO pin, right? But then they get that extra money because all the people that really should have been FTOs, like you three, all were FTOs, right? They don't want to do it anymore. So they work one shift of Districtville and they get their money. They don't have to do the daily reports, the weekly meetings, and all this other stuff. Which you're taking away from that experience again, right?
Right. So you have the politically correct officer training the new politically correct officer.
Yeah, that starts all the way back to the academy. I remember going through and constantly, I remember as a cadet watching lots and lots of videos of officers getting killed. And those stuck in my head. Like, that's not going to happen to me, And they play them all the time on breaks and everything. And that does not happen anymore because they don't want you reacting like that. They don't want you reading a body language and like, okay, we're going to town now just because you like,
You're
You know?
a guardian.
Yeah.
You're not a warrior.
right. That's the
You're a
biggest.
guardian.
That's the
You're not a
biggest-
warrior.
So I
Service.
did there's a
Yeah.
AI, it's Elon Musk's
2
AI
hours.
called Grok. And it's awesome because you put in just parameters and it'll shoot you all kinds of shit like that. And I asked about de-escalation. When did de-escalation become a thing in law enforcement? And it shot me back pretty quick, And remember the verbal judo? So we didn't realize that, but that was part of that push back in the day. But it was more of a suggestion. Verbal judo wasn't a tactic, And what de-escalation has turned into now is that is the answer to most of the problems of
Yes.
getting in force. Is that, and again, it's just, to me, it's still a suggestion, but I say you don't need to further teach people to de-escalate because you just hire good people, right? You vet them in the hiring process, and then they should go out and treat people accordingly to how you would expect them to treat. Now, I'm not saying completely. You can talk about certain things, but de-escalation has turned into a tactic. Like that is the answer that'll prevent you from having to use what is considered excessive, or just force in particular. You know what I mean?
Because the mindset is police like going out and beating people up.
But the stats they gave of all police contacts every year, what was it, like 1.5, 1.4, 1.6% by that Marinelli
Mhm.
Yeah.
of all police contacts result in force.
Yes.
And there's not even a percentage you can put to the overall police contacts and officer-involved shootings resulting in death. But in San Antonio, we had 20 officers shot in a 2-year period, 3-year period. We did some podcasts where I pulled it up. You can still find it. It was 160 officer-involved shootings where we engaged somebody, and since 2019. But we've also had 20 officers shot in the last couple of years. Why is nobody in city government or out there in the community saying, hey, what the hell is going on?
Because the police are brutal and you're the problem.
Yeah, and
That
that,
comes
the
from
good thing is that
academia,
we're winning
that comes
most
from the
of them.
media.
That is the good thing, is that we're winning most of them. Now, mind you, like someone like Rhett and those other officers that got, Rhett lost an eye, and then
Tom Rule and
Rule, and there was another one that I sent the
Rule,
pictures of it. Bad. I mean, I didn't realize.
Jonas, right?
Yeah, had almost a hole in
Yeah.
his eye there.
Yeah.
And it's part of the cowardly approach that we see from administration is that when there is an officer involved shooting where the officer is injured, it is so easy, I promise you, for the chief to go up there and go, oh, it's dangerous. You got these bad guys out here, and DA let them out too soon. They shouldn't have been out there. It's just a dangerous job. But when you have situations where you actually outright win, because we have the authority to act before we react, because that's where we're at. We've always been reactive to an extent, but even with de-escalation, it makes you further behind the reactionary curve. So now, and I've always of the belief that we miss the windows of being able to move in quickly and get this done.
Yeah.
Because we're jacking around with this bullshit suggestions that now it turns into something more.
Yes.
Because we've let this person finish their train of thought, that
Yep.
OODA loop,
Yep.
and become emboldened.
Yep.
They
Because
create a
Because you're
plan.
doing
They
nothing.
have time to do
Because
it.
you ain't
Yeah.
doing nothing.
And
Back in the day, it was like, sir, I need you to turn around, put your
That was
hand
it. Or I'm
in.
going to
Fuck
turn
you.
you around.
Fuck you. Boom. They're on the
Okay,
ground,
you're
okay,
done.
done.
Yep,
That's it.
You're
Pass
cooked.
stalemate,
No,
right?
no
Yeah.
injured officers, no,
Nope.
Well, now it's ask again.
Sir, please.
Ask again.
Let me see if I can
Beg.
get my partner to talk to you,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And,
Yes.
But this guy's he's
Sure.
coming up with his plan, you
So
know.
there were
Yep.
334 officers killed in the line of duty in 2024. Like we were talking about, the way it's going in San Antonio, we're going to lose a man or woman in uniform
Absolutely.
because they're
It's
teaching this stuff.
Yeah.
We also said that there's two things that are ankle weights to policemen nowadays, or police officers. One is the word de-escalation, which every lawyer brings up every time. Did you
Yeah.
de-escalate? Did
Yeah.
you de-escalate? And now you have the mental crisis,
Yeah.
which they're throwing it at them all the time.
Yeah.
And at what point do we have to say, hey, look, I understand this person might have some mental issues, but you're not going to let you spit on me, hit me, try to kill me with a hammer. We're not going to do that. But the administration and the city hall and now the DA's office is saying that you should do that.
It didn't come out in the trial because the
We're
people
getting
who
the
did
signal from our boss over
the
there.
people who did the study refused to
keeping tabs.
testify. But the city had a study done about how police handle mental health. And that company that they hired to do that study came in and said, I don't care how much training you give your police officers, they're not qualified to make mental health decisions out in the field. Okay? That's the end of it. Karen Fox got a copy of that study. McManus did. Jesse did. I can't remember who else did.
Do you
I
have
have
it?
that. Yeah, I have that
Send
study.
it to me. Send it to me.
Well-
I'd like to see that.
We're public safety. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. That's number one. Not
Mental health
Law
did you
care
get
workers.
enough
enforcement.
hugs when you were
Ex-
little or whatever
exactly.
the case is.
Exactly. And that's why I said
And
we
it's
have
only getting
confused a police response to the behavior of people in society with making it a priority to find out what's the reason for the way they're behaving
like you
in
said,
society.
Did your mama not hug you enough?
Right.
That's not
And
my
that's-
We've
concern.
always had
not
some
my
of that.
job.
Remember San Antonio used to be an all-purpose police force. We handled every call. They'd kind of differential police response, things like that.
Yes.
But we would get calls, and hey, my kid don't want to go to school.
Yes.
You know what we'd say? Hey, beat that little son of a bitch up. Whoop them, right? Get him to go to school. Why are you calling me to do this?
Oh, I would show up and throw a glass of water on them.
Yeah. And so it's a different world nowadays. It's not fair in any way, shape, or form to the officers out there. It's also why the profession is losing tenured, quality, experienced people.
Yes.
And it's also why the ones that are coming on are going to be faced with a lot of challenges that we're not even talking about now.
I know.
I mean, there's an evolution that's happening. We're talking about it now. Bad guy threat, administrative threat, prosecution threat. What's the next evolution of that?
Well, that's why I retired when I did. And the turning point for me was they rode up one of our young officers who he hit a deer in his patrol car. He called. We went out there. He dragged the deer off the road and into the bushes so that no passing motorist would see him have to shoot the deer. And they wrote him up because he made inappropriate comments to himself as he shot the
You were
deer.
caught on the body cam?
Yes, and they wrote him up for that.
Yeah.
And I said, I cannot function in a world like this.
Well,
Jesus.
it's
I'm not-
sad to
Get in
say.
trouble for cussing
Yeah.
in their
Right.
car because they're in a chase,
Right.
and
Or,
you know.
or you
Right.
can even
come
have
on.
just regular
So I-
conversations with your coworkers
Nope.
because there was also some
Nope.
people that got written up just making a statement that could be perceived as a statement against the department. That whole chapter 200 of the rules and regulations.
Yes.
And they were just talking amongst themselves. Somebody was reviewing a blue team, just reviewing a video, body cam video, saw it, turned it in, shot it up over to.
Yes.
And then the new thing is now they're calling internal affairs, which I would not do it. they're calling internal affairs saying, hey, what's the going thing? And I'm like, hey, that's not what internal affairs is for. We don't ask them what the going rate is, 1 day, 2 days, written reprimand or whatever. We make those decisions and then send it to internal affairs. So you could see how everything is changing, not for the better. And so it's a shame. But
do you guys remember McManus coming to in-service when we got the body-worn cameras and him standing in front of in-service and saying, these body-worn cameras will not be used for punishment. They're here to protect you. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Because I fucking remember him telling me to my face
I didn't believe it then.
that those body-worn cameras
Yeah.
were not going to be used for punishment.
And I ain't done stack charges either.
So do we have a truthfulness regulation in the department or not? Because he stood right there and lied to me. I don't know about y'all.
Well, he violated his own policy, right? I mean, we didn't even get a chance to talk about this. I mean, the round count was off. The measurements at the crime scene weren't done correctly. The light machine wasn't working. They didn't even bother to get one else. And then there was no crime scene log.
Right.
The chief was in the crime scene.
The chief didn't put booties and gloves on when he entered the crime scene.
What else are you
either.
supposed to do if you're at a scene? And
Yeah.
regardless, you're supposed to write a report. I guarantee you didn't write a report.
No, he didn't write a
You know,
report. They
never
didn't
writes
put gloves and booties
Never
on when
writes
they entered the
reports, right.
crime scene either.
Well, you
and that was
remember,
a
I mean,
big
that's
deal
part
for
of
a while.
that use of force where they changed when he put handcuffs on somebody because he wanted a little camera moment. And they're like, hey, chief, you need to do use of force. Oh, what? Oh, no, not for that. So it's like,
Well, that's the problem when you have,
This is
when
your
you have a
stuff.
politician at the head of the organization. Like, he never worked here, so I can't speak on what he did. But I've been to D.C. and I've asked around about him, and nobody knows anything about him. And it may be good or bad, but I guarantee if you go around and ask somebody that's been here longer than 5 years about here, they may say something. They're going to know who we are. They're going to say good or bad. That's up to them, right? But nobody even knew who this guy was.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
The other thing they didn't do is the other officers who pulled their guns, they didn't do a show of force in Blue Team. Nobody made them do a show of force in Blue Team. Well, that'll get you in big trouble out on patrol if you pull your gun and somebody finds it on body cam and you didn't do a show of force report, which is the most ridiculous thing.
And that's why
I've
so
ever
many
heard
don't
of.
ever pull their gun out.
And I was just going to say that.
well, you remember there was also a point, what was it, where if you pointed the gun at somebody, so we had people purposely not pointing the guns at them.
Right.
They were down here.
Yeah, they're doing that now.
Yeah, and so when I was in rope, I'd see it and I'm like,
Oh,
bless you.
thank you.
I'm like, guys, don't fucking do that.
Yep.
If you need to point your gun at them, because I teach where I cheapen target intimidation on these people. So
Yeah.
I don't like low ready. I teach what you call a combat ready.
Right.
Because I keep it low, but I also got to see
Yeah,
your
but
hands.
I can shoot you
I
from here.
can shoot you from here. So these people are purposely off,
Yes.
or down.
Yes.
Thank God not too many
Yeah.
FBI bullshit up this way, but it's infectious.
Yes.
And it's a bad precedent to set for these guys because somebody doesn't like that we point our guns at.
It's going to have some serious negative
Yeah, I mean,
ramifications
the
on-
safety
I'm
with
gonna
that
go
is
you
finger
one-
off the trigger.
More
You know.
to say, it's not just going to get somebody killed, it's going to get some bodies killed before anything changes. I guarantee.
Yeah, but the longer nothing happens, the more successful that looks like it's working.
I
You know what I
know.
mean? Whatever that stupid idea is.
Yeah.
Because I've always said, like what we talk about, going back to the old school way. If for some reason that they say, look, we're going to go back to the ass till night, we're going to go back to the warrior mentality. The first time something very scandalous happens, they're going to go, see, that's why we don't do that. Again, before the investigation, kind of like this case, before all the cards are thrown on the table, they're going to jump to judgment, knee jerk, and they're going to say, no, let's not do that anymore. And because we'll never catch back up with that.
Yeah,
We have too many people. Yeah, the ship has sailed.
But remember, everything is cyclical. I'm not giving up on.
Will we be alive when it comes back this way?
I give it 20 years.
At the academy, I would tell the cadets, because they'd come down after months up there, and we talked about guardian mentality and whatever. I told them you cannot be an effective guardian if you're not an adequate warrior first, because if you can't protect yourself, you're not protecting anybody else. And so, you know, they were like, whoa. I was like, warrior, you're a warrior. You know, I'm trying to bring this back while I'm there, you know, just by explaining that. You can't be an effective guardian. You cannot if you're not an adequate warrior first, you know. So let's bring that back. Down here, we'll do it low because
I'm doing it.
Well, speaking of warriors, you know, it takes a lot of courage to come on a podcast and talk about the things we talked about today. I said that to Jesse and Tom for coming on. I'll say it to you guys too. We appreciate your candor. We appreciate you being forthright with the listeners and joining us here today. And
I was going to say, did we get to about what you wanted to say? Because you were going down the line.
Oh,
did we get to Mark?
New people, new detectives, new officers. What's your advice for them?
I would just, if you want to be an officer, or you're thinking about being an officer, or you are an officer, I think the most important question is one that you're going to get asked in the hiring process, but you've got to have a serious conversation with yourself. Why do you want to do this? And the reason is going to have to be some reason bigger than yourself, because there's not going to be many attaboys. Most of the time when you hear from somebody, it's going to be because maybe you didn't do something perfect or exactly the way they wanted it done. So you've got to have a driving force within you bigger than yourself to take on the disciplines of being a police officer.
And responsibilities greater
Yes.
than you think you're taking on.
That's right.
Right? To that earlier point,
Oh, yeah.
everything now matters. You're responsible for everything.
That's right.
Yes.
And to detectives, I would just simply say, if somebody tells you something, they tell you what happened or why it happened, ask them why. Make them show you why. If they can't tell you why or show you why, don't believe them.
Like the dots before you connect.
I like that.
Before you connect the dots.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I appreciated you saying that. I appreciate you all being here. Willie, you want to close with anything?
Yeah,
Just so
definitely.
we know.
So on the same topic of talking to these younger officers and this advice, and then from what I said earlier, running into these young guys, and especially the guys that were supporting in court, came to court to support these officers. You know, they're younger. You know, and then hearing from other people that are listening, and I appreciate you guys listening to us, and please share. You know, the podcast with other people. Maybe there's some other your coworkers that haven't heard about it. But our purpose, obviously, is to bring to light some of these things that are occurring within our culture, because it's still our culture, regardless if we're retired. You never lose that. To take this job seriously. I mean, and I've mentioned this before. It used to be survival on the streets, which I would say it's not over. You still have to watch your ass there, but you also have to watch your ass now from the administration and this DA that we have in our county. And I'm not trying to say that to be negative in a sense. It just is what it is. But if you're going to get into this profession, take it seriously. And based on this podcast, we have true experts here, knowledgeable people that is priceless information that you would want to go on and go, hey, man, I want to know what you know. I mean, I'm not doing this because you guys are here. You're true professionals in what you guys were doing and learned the trade and the craft very well to be able to exonerate 3 San Antonio police officers. You know what I mean? And in front of a judge, you're talking about doctors of law. What were there, 13 of them? You know, in that room, besides, you know, the judge is an attorney, but to be part of that process, to put all the cards out on the table and then have other people that don't know much about it to school them and for them to make this righteous decision, no doubt. So I want to say, again, thank you guys for coming on and again, having the courage to do so and speak to us, being open and free with your opinions, because they really do matter, and they matter to the listeners, and especially the young ones. And I do know that there's going to be a lot of retirees that are going, yeah, I'm glad he said that, because they can relate. You guys can relate, and we're going to continue to do this. We're going to have one more podcast with the attorneys. Hopefully Bobby can come on, maybe Butch, to talk further about this, again, from their perspective. But thank you guys for being here, taking the time. It's gone a little bit longer than we normally go. And keep doing what you're doing. Keep the righteous fight on.
Thank you all for stepping up for them. It's very appreciated today. That day, you guys were champions of justice, and I appreciate you guys more than I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.